We build our prisons, holes in the walls. Sunlight we hide from to cover our faults. We alter actions to suit what we feel. The colors slowly fading, seals in our ears. But we can hear now, we can hear loud and clear. Bells in our stomachs when truth is here. Now we can hear loud and clear. Bells in our stomachs when truth is here. Possessions hold us, full to the brim. The weights they keep us from flight or from swim. How vast the fields are, the oceans and skies. We lose our sight of, cover our eyes. But we can hear now, we can hear loud and clear. Bells in our stomachs when truth is here. Now we can hear loud and clear. Bells in our stomachs when truth is here. Now we can hear loud and clear. Bells in our stomachs when truth is here. Now we can hear loud and clear. Bells in our stomachs when truth is here. When truth is here. When truth is here. When truth is here. When truth is here.
face truth at last. Winding through your mind, moment, space, and time. As you look through seasons that have come and gone, and you wonder how we even made it this far. As you look through seasons that have come and gone, and you wonder how we even made it this far. Do you remember this time? Do you remember this time? Will you remember this time? Will you remember this time? Keeps the heart afraid, no matter what the change. Life remains the same as you look through seasons that have come and gone, and you wonder how we even made it this far. As you look through seasons that have come and gone, and you wonder how we even made it this far. Do you remember this time? Do you remember this time? Will you remember this time? Will you remember this time? Remember this time? Do you remember this time? Will you remember this time? Will you remember this time?
this. Okay, good morning. How lovely to see you all here again this morning. Thank you for being with us and for your patience. We are going to start this morning session with the first panel. First of all, the high-level opening for the LDC5 Monitor. These are our basically our key collaborators for this great initiative. So I would give immediately the floor to Mr. Sami Pirkala of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Finland, our gracious and very generous host. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this LDC5 Monitoring Day, which happens in conjunction with the LDC Future Forum. Today, we will turn our focus on the monitoring of the implementation of the Doha Programme of Action. Evidence-based decision-making is dear to Finland. We believe that high-quality data will lead to high-quality decisions, which in turn will lead to better well-being of citizens. The Doha Programme of Action guides us in our efforts to support the development of the least developed states. In this context, we believe that the role of high-quality data and evidence is vital. And it is also important to take into account the differing situations of LDC countries. So Finland is very grateful to the organizers of this event today, and we believe that this will really help us to monitor the implementation in a correct way and to base it on evidence. Finland has funded the LDC Future Forum since 2021, when the first conference was organized in Helsinki. We believe that it is important to have a platform where the issues important to least developed countries can be discussed in an open and equal manner. This is why Finland last year in Doha decided to fund the LDC Future Forum for the next 5 years. I believe you have heard this from my colleagues yesterday and Tuesday many times, but I will say it one more time. Thank you for coming to Helsinki. I hope you have gained new insights from your discussions on Tuesday and Wednesday, and I hope that our discussions today will help us in defining what are the best ways to monitor the implementation of the Doha Programme of Action. Thank you very much. Happy to have you here and to be here with you today. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. It's a great pleasure to see you all, and we are, of course, as OHRLS, also very grateful to Finland for supporting both the forum and especially also this event today. As USG Fatima said yesterday, also monitoring is really very important for us. I mean, we are the office, in case somebody doesn't know what UNU-WIDER is, it's the Office of the High Representative for LDCs, LLDCs, and SIDS. So we basically are supporting the LDCs and the other groups in New York and around the world. And we are very grateful to OECD Development Center, FAIRDI, and of course UNU-WIDER to have joined also the organization of the main forum. We could not have done this without you. And we are looking forward to more interesting discussions today. Thank you so much.
myself to the previous speakers in welcoming you, and my role together with my friends Patrick and Kunal is to set the scene. And I think that the way that I would like to do it briefly is to recall why this is important, what we would like to do, and how we would like to do it. But the what has already been somehow explained by our host here. It's important that we have a credible mechanism to monitor the implementation of the program of action. And the program of action is a very broad and ambitious document which covers several dimensions. And in a previous experience that we launched on the occasion of the Istanbul program of action, the previous 10-year program, we set for ourselves the ambitions of covering all the dimensions of the program of action and to go into the monitoring with data of each one of the different commitments. I think that this is still very important and useful, but we also believe that it is important to focus on some transformative areas that can help advancing the different dimensions of the Doha program of action. And this is the reason why, together with our partner here, we are suggesting, and we launched this officially in Doha, to focus on two critical dimensions that, in our view, contribute to the advancement of development and well-being in the LDCs. On one end, focusing on vulnerabilities and better understanding what are the drivers of those vulnerabilities and how best countries and the international support measures can respond to those vulnerabilities. On the other end, we also believe that it's very important to look at how countries can advance in the production transformation agenda, in the diversification of their productive structure, because this is critical to reduce another source of vulnerability, maybe more endogenous than the ones that are related to climate or the fact that you are a landlocked country. And we believe that these are opportunities also to take advantage of ongoing transformation in the green and the digital field. So the objective of the monitor, of the LDC5 monitor, will be, yes, to monitor the implementation of the Doha program of action, but to put in particular focus on the vulnerabilities, better measuring and better understanding the vulnerabilities, and on the other hand, understanding what policies and what institutions can help the process of structural transformation and productive transformation in countries. How do we plan to do it? So that's the why and what. How do we plan to do it? Well, we plan to do it in a very inclusive way. First of all, by bringing in this exercise all those institutions that have an interest in this process. You see here at the bottom, there are, let's say, the three brothers or sisters that are pushing forward for this initiative, FERDI, UNU-WIDER, and the Development Center. But there are several friends and partner institutions that are also that have also participated in the previous edition of the monitor, and there are probably new ones that would like to join. So we have the Commonwealth Secretariat, has been a very strong partner. We had ODI, we have think tanks from the South. And so this is an initiative that really is open to all those who want to participate. But we also want to introduce another innovation, which is to work with countries. And when we say countries, it's both governments, but also non-governmental institutions, to promote a peer learning exercise about what can be done to advance production transformation. We have already started to work with some countries, in particular with Bangladesh and with Togo at the Development Center. Our friends at UNU-WIDER have a long tradition of having worked with other countries like Tanzania, like Mozambique, and I'm sure that Kunal will say more about that. And of course, FERDI has a long tradition of working with a number of LDCs, in particular in sub-Saharan Africa. So the idea is bringing a process, bringing countries together to learn from one another in terms of what are the most effective policies to undertake and to achieve structural transformation. So with this, I would like to conclude, inviting you to contribute to the discussion this morning and to be in touch. Of course, we're very grateful to both the United Nations Office of the High Representative for the partnership that we have with them, with Susanna and with all the friends here. Very grateful to the government of Finland for hosting us here, and very grateful to all of you who will join this journey with us. Our objective is to be ready by the midterm review in Doha, to have already a monitoring document and some experiences that we can share in terms of how countries have walked the talk in implementing the program of action. Thank you very much.
So I'm Kunal Sen, the director of UNU-WIDER, and UNU-WIDER, along with FERDI and the OECD Development Center, along also with the UNOHRRS, has been working on this monitor. As Federico mentioned, we did a launch in the Doha Ministerial Conference a couple of years back. I'm not going to sort of repeat what Federico very nicely set the stage for this event. I just want to mention that when we talk about a monitor, you usually think of numbers and quantitative data, but this monitor is that, but also something much more than that. So the monitor is really about two things. It's about monitoring critical indicators related to vulnerabilities and production transformation. In fact, we'll hear a little bit about measuring vulnerability later on in the second session from FERDI's wonderful work on this. So that's the quant side, trying to think about indicators, measure, and we want to really hear from you on how we can best measure vulnerability and structural transformation. And that's the first session, or substantial session of the day. Which is where we discuss indicators. The second really is to try and provide suggestions on how international support measures, ISMs in short, and we had a little bit of a discussion that yesterday on this, and partnerships, development partners, very different from both donor countries, but also other partners like the Commonwealth Secretariat, how they can actually support this process graduation. How can ISMs be targeted so that they can really help in trying to reduce vulnerabilities and increase structural transformation, production transformation in LDCs. And the way we're thinking about this is that we have 4 countries as partner countries in the LDCs. Bangladesh was mentioned by Federico, Togo, and Mozambique and Tanzania, and we are very pleased to have representatives from these 4 countries here in the event. And UNU-WIDER has been working with the partners in Mozambique, also Tanzania for many, many years. And so it's very important for us to try and understand, both from the countries been working with for many years, but also from other LDCs, exactly how we address the issues of vulnerability and structural transformation. And that's really going to be what we're going to try and today. So the event today, I just want to mention very clearly what the objectives of this event are. So one is to identify the scope, including ISMs, methodologies, and tools of the LDC5 Monitor. It's going to be very much a discussion that happens in the first part of the morning. And then to hear also, both in the 2 sessions we have today, from LDCs themselves on specific aspects that the LDC5 Monitor should investigate. So what would we want to do more on as we get started on this process? And then third, identify key specificities of potential selected countries. We already have, as I mentioned, 4 countries as partners in this LDC partners in the monitor. We may want to expand to more countries and look for other partners too. So what exactly are the things we want to focus on in this particular monitor as we go forward? The idea is to do this kind of monitor tracking every year as part of the LDC Future Forum, at least for the next 5 years, and to try and build more partnerships with others to try to make this monitor a really living reality. Thank you.
Bonjour tout le monde. Comme hier, je vais continuer de parler en français, d'autant plus que nous avons d'excellents interprètes et je suis heureux qu'ils puissent faire leur travail devant un public qui est peut-être pas à majorité francophone, mais où la présence francophone est quand même assez évidente. Du côté de la FERDI, nous sommes très heureux de pouvoir nous associer à cet exercice un peu original qu'est je vais le dire en anglais, LDC5 Monitor. Car c'est la suite d'un projet que nous avions eu il y a 10 ans et qui a eu son existence assez utile, qui était le LDC4 Monitor après la conférence d'Istanbul. Et le LDC5 Monitor a précisément pour objet de reprendre, d'amplifier, de renouveler, d'approfondir ce qui avait été engagé avec le LDC4 Monitor. Et c'est pourquoi je me permets de rappeler quels étaient les objectifs de ce monitor et quels sont encore ceux du présent exercice. Monitor, ça veut dire suivre. C'est un peu aussi évaluer. Et il ne s'agit pas aujourd'hui de faire ce que font très bien toute une série d'institutions, OHRLS en premier chef, le comité de politique de développement, la CNUSED, UNDSA et toute une série d'autres organismes. Il ne s'agit pas de réinventer la roue, il ne s'agit pas de refaire ce qui est mieux fait ailleurs. Mais, et ce n'était pas l'objectif initial, c'était de regarder de façon indépendante certains aspects de la mise en œuvre du programme d'Istanbul et aujourd'hui du programme de Doha. Les institutions officielles des Nations Unies ont une immense capacité de collecte de données, d'analyse, etc. Mais il y a besoin d'un regard un peu indépendant. Et c'est un peu le but de ce monitor, c'était de regrouper des think tanks du Nord et des think tanks du Sud. Alors, c'était la seconde caractéristique, c'était un assemblage, et c'est de nouveau un assemblage que nous essayons de constituer, qui n'est pas encore, je dirais, solidifié, d'institutions internationales ou du Nord, et ce qui est essentiel, des partenaires du Sud, des think tanks du Sud. Think tanks ou institutions gouvernementales, mais que ce soit une institution d'évaluation qui soit vraiment conjointe. Alors, nous avons dans le cercle de famille, nous avons évidemment les anciens partenaires du Monitor 4, qui était le centre de développement de l'OCDE, l'ODI qui vient avec nous mais qui n'avait pas eu un rôle très important, le secrétariat du Commonwealth était là, présent aussi dans le LDC5 Monitor, et puis nous avions des think tanks du Sud, et ça c'est très important. L'échantillon va se renouveler parce que comme l'a rappelé Federico, il y a des pays plus précis sur lesquels le Monitor va travailler. Il a cité notamment le Togo et le Bangladesh, qui était très présent parce que avait un think tank qui était très actif au Bangladesh pour le LDC4 Monitor. C'était Deb Bhattacharya qui était un peu le leader de ce Monitor 4. Et donc nous devons rester dans cette logique d'évaluation indépendante et collaborative. Et donc ce partenariat est très important. Et il est d'autant plus important que le thème qui a été choisi à Doha lors de la séance inaugurale de ce monitor était précisément, comme l'a rappelé Federico et Kumal, à cheval sur l'analyse des vulnérabilités et de la transformation structurelle. J'ai produit hier un petit papier que vous pouvez trouver en français ou en anglais sur le site de la FERDI qui s'appelle Vulnérabilité structurelle vulnérabilité et transformation structurelle au pluriel, leur lien et la cohérence du LDC5 Monitor. Parce que plusieurs personnes nous ont dit, mais qu'est-ce que vous voulez faire? Vous voulez travailler sur la vulnérabilité ou sur la transformation structurelle? Eh bien, en fait, chacun de ces mots ont un contenu qui varie selon les locuteurs. Et on commence à connaître un peu mieux ce qu'est la vulnérabilité structurelle. On connaît un peu mieux ce qu'est la transformation structurelle, mais je me suis permis de dire dans cette note que la transformation structurelle, c'était une auberge espagnole, vous savez, qui est ce que l'on y met. Parce qu'on l'a bien vu au cours de ces 2 dernières journées, le mot transformation structurelle a été utilisé à tout va pour y mettre beaucoup de choses, notamment l'innovation, etc. Et c'est très bien. Même si, pour les économistes un peu qui se veulent rigoureux, mais ils ne le sont qu'apparemment, la transformation structurelle a un sens très précis de réallocation des gains de croissance dus à la réallocation intersectorielle des facteurs. C'est beaucoup plus que cela. Et l'intérêt du Monitor, justement par sa participation avec les pays du Sud, des think tanks du Sud, c'est justement de donner un contenu qui n'est pas universel à la transformation structurelle, mais qui est le contenu que les pays eux-mêmes veulent y mettre. Le Monitor n'est pas là pour dire aux pays partenaires voilà ce que c'est que la transformation structurelle et ce que vous devez faire. Absolument pas. D'abord, on ne sait pas bien ce que c'est. Et puis, la bonne transformation structurelle n'est pas la même selon les pays. Donc, et c'est un vieux problème. Hein. Je me permets de rappeler que dans les débuts de l'économie du développement, tout le monde disait le développement, c'est une croissance avec la transformation structurelle. Ça date de 70 ans, ce terme. Hein. Donc, il faut renouveler, mais le renouveler en partant des besoins et de l'analyse même des pays. Et c'est un peu le but du LDC5 Monitor. Voilà. Et donc, nous allons essayer d'approfondir déjà un peu ce sujet entre nous. Et nous devons aller vite, parce que la conférence de Doha a lieu après l'adoption du programme de Doha, comme vous le savez, mais ça fait déjà 1 an, et donc le programme de Doha, il a déjà 2 ans, hein, et donc nous devons nous dire quels sont nos outils pour évaluer quelque chose qui est déjà en cours depuis 2 ans. Donc ne perdons pas de temps, et c'est pour ça que je m'arrête tout de suite.
Okay, so Patrick, you're chairing the next session.
Okay.
We need to finish at 11 o'clock. Here, Lawrence Mafuru. Is Lawrence here? Yeah. And Safauddin Ahmad. And then we have a couple of virtual presentations, well, we're not sure. Yep. Okay, leave it to you. Yeah.
Merci, bonjour. Okay, from Tanzania, and
Thank you.
you are from W.
This. No.
No, that's a concession. Where are you?
Yeah.
Okay, Bangladesh. For the present time, we have no. We are still waiting for Mozambique, more or less.
But Togo should start.
Pardon?
Both Togo and Mozambique are online.
Online, okay.
So Togo starts, then Mozambique. But at the moment we don't have Mozambique, so we might need to skip.
So
We can see after Togo. So Togo starts online.
Togo is online also. Bon, alors, c'est l'intérêt. L'intérêt de ce monitor, c'est d'avoir des personnes sur le terrain, mais sur le terrain, ça veut dire online. Et donc, nous allons avoir une séance hybride avec d'éminents participants qui nous font l'honneur d'être là physiquement et d'autres qui nous font l'honneur d'être là online. Et nous allons commencer par, nous entendrons d'abord la représentante la ministre du Commerce du Togo, que nous avons entendu hier déjà, pour notre plus grand bénéfice. Et ensuite, nous aurons, au moment où ils seront en ligne, le Mozambique. Alors, le but de cette session, vous l'avez vu dans le programme, est de regarder quels sont les indicateurs et les politiques qui vont accompagner le déroulement du programme de Doha, et quels sont les points, ce qui nous intéresse, nous ici, en tant que responsables de ce monitor, c'est de savoir comment les pays qui sont ici représentés autour de la table perçoivent l'utilité de ce LDC5 Monitor, et quant aux indicateurs et aux politiques. Et plutôt que de dire mon point de vue sur ce sujet, vous le trouverez d'ailleurs dans la note que j'ai évoquée tout à l'heure, disponible sur le site de la FERDI, nous préférons entendre le point de vue des pays, des PMA eux-mêmes, qui sont ici présents. Donc, nous allons entendre d'abord la représentante du Togo. Madame la ministre, vous êtes en ligne avec nous ? Rebonjour, merci d'être fidèle chaque jour à nos activités et nous avons le plaisir de vous écouter pendant 6 à 7 minutes, le temps que vous voulez prendre.
D'être avec vous ce matin et j'aurais bien voulu être présente physiquement en Finlande, mais bon, je n'ai pas pu, mais je dirais aujourd'hui avec l'innovation et le digital, nous pouvons être ensemble. Donc je tiens à remercier les organisateurs de cette activité pour l'invitation, notamment l'OCDE, FERDI, UNU-WIDER et le haut représentant des Nations Unies pour les PMA. Et je tiens également à saluer les intervenants, notamment ceux de la Tanzanie, du Bangladesh, du Mozambique et du secrétariat du Commonwealth et autres qui seront sur ce podium. Donc, parlons par rapport aux questions qu'on peut se poser, notamment quand on parle de LDC5 Monitor, donc comment monitorer, je dirais, ce passage de PMA vers les pays avancés. Quels sont les indicateurs qui sont les plus appropriés pour mieux comprendre la vulnérabilité et la transformation de la production dans le contexte des PMA? Tout d'abord, je tiens à rappeler que la trajectoire des PMA ces dernières années montre des avancées réelles. Effectivement, ce qu'on peut noter, c'est que les PMA ont augmenté leur production de richesse sur les 50 dernières années et plus particulièrement dans les années 90. Donc, le PIB réel des PMA a été multiplié par 5 entre 1971 et 2020. Il reste que le PIB réel par habitant a augmenté à un rythme beaucoup plus lent que le PIB réel, 1,3% par an. Donc, passant environ de $600 à $1080 sur la même période en raison d'une croissance démographique assez forte. Donc, la baisse du niveau de pauvreté montre que les PMA ne sont pas condamnés à un état de fait. Et comme la notion de handicap structurel pourrait le laisser croire. Au Togo, par exemple, nous sommes dans une voie dynamique de progrès durable et partagée grâce à nos propres efforts continus de réforme et une agilité publique et entrepreneuriale. Et ce que nous pouvons dire, c'est que l'indice, en termes de statistiques qu'on peut monitorer, l'indice de pauvreté a régressé considérablement, passant de 61,7% en 2006 à 55,1% en 2015 et 45,5% en 2018. Donc, pour autant, il faut quand même relever que ces éléments ne doivent pas cacher une réalité selon laquelle, à ce jour, moins de 10 pays sont sortis de la liste des PMA en 50 ans, alors que corrélativement, dans la même période, nous avons 25 pays qui sont venus s'ajouter. Donc, revenons à la question des indicateurs de vulnérabilité. Je tiens à rappeler que la vulnérabilité ne saurait être appréhendée qu'à travers des approches multidimensionnelles qui prennent en compte plusieurs éléments pour comprendre les défis auxquels les PMA doivent faire face. Les indicateurs de mesure de la vulnérabilité doivent aborder la question de l'accès au financement, le problème des changements climatiques, le problème de l'endettement, le problème d'extrême pauvreté dans certains pays, l'accès à l'énergie, la protection sociale, le capital humain, l'équité genre, la sécurité alimentaire, la fracture numérique, notamment l'accès et l'utilisation de l'Internet qui sont à la traîne dans certains PMA, de l'environnement et de la sécurité. Pour ma part, ce sont les indicateurs, les éléments qui doivent être pris en compte pour quand on veut faire, je dirais, quand on veut parler de monitorer des indicateurs de vulnérabilité des PMA. Donc, s'agissant du lien qu'on peut faire entre la transformation structurelle et la vulnérabilité, nous pensons que la transformation structurelle des économies contribuerait efficacement à réduire ces vulnérabilités. Les PMA présentent des vulnérabilités importantes qui contribuent à ralentir les progrès en matière de transformation structurelle et de capacité productive. Pour rappel, avec l'appui de l'OCDE, que je salue au passage, et en collaboration avec plusieurs partenaires, le Togo a lancé en 2021 un examen de ses politiques de transformation économique. Donc, c'est une dynamique qui est un processus qui est en cours et qui va nous permettre effectivement d'identifier des indicateurs qui sont déjà là, on a déjà identifié, de les monitorer, de mettre en place des outils pour les monitorer par rapport aux objectifs qu'on s'est fixés, de pouvoir également faire des analyses par rapport à des pays pairs. Il y a des pays qui ont été cités par le premier intervenant, Ferdi, et ça nous permettra de pouvoir, je dirais, mettre en branle une dynamique de transformation structurelle. Peut-être je pourrais intervenir également rapidement sur le second point, je dirais, quels sont les éléments les plus importants à prendre en considération lors de la sélection de ces indicateurs? Parce que si on identifie un certain nombre d'indicateurs qu'on va monitorer et que ce sont les évolutions de ces indicateurs qui vont nous permettre de constater les avancées que nous souhaitons avoir, une question fondamentale reste et dire quels sont les éléments qui doivent être pris en compte quand on sélectionne ces indicateurs. Donc, le cadre actuel des politiques nationales et internationales n'a pas aidé la majorité des PMA à surmonter les grands défis de développement auxquels ils sont confrontés. Les problèmes de développement des PMA sont restés globalement les mêmes au cours des 50 dernières années et leur marginalisation dans le commerce international a persisté. Les PMA présentent également des vulnérabilités qui peuvent être sous-estimées par les indicateurs actuels et les mécanismes actuels de financement de développement. Donc, il est donc important de rappeler que le principal objectif d'un PMA est précisément de ne plus en être un. Il y a des pays qui sont sortis de cette catégorie et je pense que c'est l'objectif de tous les pays qui sont dans cette catégorie-là de ne plus être des PMA. En conséquence, le partenariat et toutes les initiatives internationales, y compris les indicateurs de mesure et d'évaluation, doivent tendre vers cet objectif. Ainsi, la sélection des indicateurs devrait tenir compte de la transition en douceur de la catégorie de PMA, de la disponibilité des données, de la fiabilité et de la comparabilité des données. La situation sécuritaire des PMA devrait être prise en compte dans toute politique de développement et de partenariat, de même que les préoccupations au changement climatique. Sur le point relatif, je dirais, aux politiques clés mises en place au Togo, pour terminer mes propos, au Togo, plusieurs politiques et initiatives ont été mises en place pour aborder les problèmes de vulnérabilité et encourager la transformation de la production, en particulier dans le contexte des PMA. Ainsi, sur le plan économique, nous avons développé des efforts pour stabiliser d'abord notre cadre macroéconomique et améliorer l'environnement des affaires. L'indice de capital humain du Togo est passé ainsi de 0,368 en 2010 à 0,432 en 2020, et devant ses pairs de l'espace UNUA, traduisant alors, entre autres, une amélioration des conditions sanitaires, une amélioration de la sécurité alimentaire, de même qu'une amélioration du taux de scolarisation et d'alphabétisation. Et toujours dans le but de devenir un pays émergent à l'horizon 2030, nous nous sommes engagés dans un processus de transformation structurelle de notre économie et accélérer la mise en œuvre de la vision d'un pays en paix, d'une nation moderne marquée par une croissance économique inclusive et durable. La stratégie en cours est pilotée dans le cadre de la feuille de route gouvernementale 2020-2025 et qui est articulée essentiellement autour de 3 axes. J'en ai parlé hier, notamment l'axe 1 qui est de renforcer l'inclusion et l'harmonie sociale et de consolider la paix. L'axe 2 qui est de dynamiser la création d'emplois en s'appuyant sur les forces de l'économie. Et l'axe 3 qui est de moderniser le pays et de renforcer ses structures. Donc, je pense que M. Guillemot, donc je ne veux pas monopoliser plus longtemps la parole, je vais m'arrêter là. Et j'espère avoir l'opportunité de pouvoir reprendre la parole plus tard. Je vous remercie de votre attention.
L'aurais pas fait parce que votre propos était tellement intéressant que ça aurait été un gaspillage de temps. Mais merci de tout ce que vous avez dit. Je voudrais juste rebondir sur un point qui va nous fournir le fil de la discussion, c'est le lien que vous avez fait de façon extrêmement claire entre la réduction de la vulnérabilité et la transformation structurelle. Et ça, c'était un point important que nous devons avoir à l'esprit, comme je l'ai dit tout à l'heure, pour assurer la cohérence de ce projet du LDC5 Monitor. Et je dirais, vous avez parlé des indicateurs, et au fond, chacun des indicateurs qui est retenu, des composants du MVI, de l'indicateur multidimensionnel ou d'un autre, sont autant de cibles de la transformation structurelle. Alors, je ne sais pas si le Mozambique nous a rejoints. Non. Alors, nous passons tout de suite au représentant de la Tanzanie, qui est M. Lawrence Mafuru, qui est le secrétaire exécutif de la commission de planification auprès du président de la Tanzanie. Je devrais dire en anglais, Executive Secretary of the Planning Commission of the President of East Tanzania. Dear Lawrence Mafuru, you have the floor, please, for 6-7 minutes, if you can. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I will try. As my name is Lawrence from the United Republic of Tanzania Planning Commission. I would like to thank the organizers for the invitation, and obviously by extension, the Finland government for generosity and the kind host that they've extended to us. So perhaps I will quickly paint the journey that Tanzania has traveled over the last 2 decades on the development agenda. Tanzania started its development agenda officially in 2000 through a blueprint, which is called Tanzania Development Vision 2025. This was a document which Tanzania decided to follow as a pathway towards its initiative to get out of poverty. This has been implemented in a period of 5 years. Every 5 years we do have an FYDP, 5-year development plan, which clearly guides the country in terms of what needs to be delivered towards that. The major undertaking of the Vision 2025 was to get Tanzania into a middle-income country with an indicator of per capita income of $3,000 by the year 2025. Obviously, incumbent with that, we had other social indicators, which talks about food sufficiency in the country, improved education, health sector, water, sanitation, energy, and all the related social sector development. So we've just made a quick assessment the last 6 months, a self-independent assessment, to just find out how have we done in terms of delivering the Vision 2025 and really looking at some of the key indicators. One of the things that came out quite clearly is that the economy, or the GDP of Tanzania, has grown over the last 2 decades consistently at an average rate of 6%. Our target for getting into middle-income country was 8% or 10% to be able to achieve the middle-income status by 2025. So with that growth, we're definitely we're missing the target. We're currently measuring at $1,200 per capita income. It requires miracles for us to get to $3,000 over the next 2 years. But you know what? We are looking at it as a glass half filled, not necessarily an empty glass. We have really made progress, because if it wasn't for this Vision 2025, we wouldn't achieve this target. But also, if you look at primary school enrollment, secondary school enrollment, all these numbers are far, far better than what it was 2 decades ago. Food sufficiency, Tanzania today does not really worry about drought or heavy rains, because our food sufficiency coverage is of 124%. At any given time, we will have food. We're now discussing how do we support the region in terms of food sufficiency. Our key indicator or focus in the next round of development is how do we get nutritional food, quality of food, to enable Tanzania to be healthy in terms of the food we consume, but not about the quantity of food that we have. So hunger is probably a thing of the past. And we're hoping that with all the challenges of climate and environmental degradation, we may not see a reversal of that trend given where we are. But there are a few things that are coming out as challenges, and these are the indicators we would like to monitor. Despite the growth, our economic structure is not transforming. We still have a lot of people in the farm, so agriculture is still agrarian. So for us to really make some progress, there are some policy decisions that we're making to modernize agriculture, because agriculture tends to employ a lot of people in the country, especially the rural Tanzania, which is over 70 in terms of population, 70% population. So we believe that if we're able to transform agriculture into a modern agriculture where it's mechanized, use of farm implements, fertilizers, we could see a lot more improvement of the quality of life and poverty eradication from the majority of Tanzanians who are preoccupied in the agricultural sector. And agriculture in a broader definition of both crop farming, livestock and fisheries. We tend to lump them together as one sector because they do tend to take place within the same area, rural areas. So that's one area that we need to focus. As we speak transformation, we need to transform this massive sector that is employing a lot of people. Quickly, when you start talking about that, then you talk about agro-processing or processing industries, because over the last 2 decades, our export growth has seen volumes growing, but value has not been that impressive. Simply means that we are selling raw commodities outside the country. Our major policy now will be directed towards investment or in processing industries. So our FDI policies is to create incentives that will get in FDI that will support industrial processing in the country, so we can add value in what we sell outside Tanzania in order to address the challenges that we're facing on the export side. In order to also support us not to wait for another 25 years to get into a middle-income country, we've made a clear and conscious decision that technology is going to be key. And as such, we have made some strides in the area of technology. Tanzania, as a government, we're using e-government as a platform to deliver government services within the government. There's a number of initiatives that we've done. Number one, we have invested in a multi-billion shilling or multi-billion dollar initiative where we are expanding our national ICT broadband backbone, which is connecting the country. So the backbone is becoming an important infrastructure to facilitate connectivity if we're to move into the digital transformation space and be part and parcel of the fourth industrial revolution. So we are connecting the regions and the districts, but also the backbone is also supporting the neighboring countries in the region. Tanzania is also pushing itself for significance to become the regional hub for trade and the logistics. So we're supporting the surrounding countries in the region as well with the backbone. I think at the first time in the history of Tanzania, we were able to conduct digital census in the country in 2022. We no longer use papers to count people. We had people deployed out with some gadgets, which helped us to, reduce the time that we spend on getting the population numbers. We were also able to identify settlements and houses. So we're moving in a direction where really, if we're going to put policy interventions in our space, technology is supporting. So we have finally managed to address the inclusivity. One of the challenges we faced is that despite the growth that we've seen, it has not been inclusive enough. But working with the financial sector, mobile network operators, Tanzania is one of the very inclusive country in terms of financial inclusion, where just by the use of or integrating financial services, banking and MNOs into the financial space, we now have, the majority of Tanzanians, over 70% of them, accessing an official system of banking or financial services sector, removing the need for people to travel long distances to access a financial services sector. So I think there are some good progress that we've made. We continue to embrace, the rollout of use of technology, both in terms of our economic sectors and in the government operations, in the delivery, believing that these will indeed support in the transformation of our economy. Within the time that I've been given, I think I'll stop there. If there's time to talk again, I'll use the time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is very rich presentation, and there are so many things to return from your presentation, but let me just pick up one or two things. We have seen in your view of the structural transformations that it's all the aspects of development which are included. And in particular, I noted the point you made about the transformation in agriculture. And it is one of the sources of growth in Tanzania due to innovation and deep transformation within the agricultural or agro-industrial sector. That's a very important point because it is often misunderstood in the phraseology of structural transformation. And the other point is the link you have done with macroeconomic policy, the tax policy, and so, which is also part of the strategy. But we should move to the next speaker, Mr. Okay. From Bangladesh? Yeah. Saifuddin Ahmad, Joint Secretary Trade Support Measure Wing at the Ministry of Commerce in Bangladesh. As you know, we are quite interested to hear you because Bangladesh is so important in the discussion about the LDCs. It's a leader in the thinking about LDCs matters. Please.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, Moderator here, Excellency Minister Commerce, Togo, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to all of you. Let me start by thanking Government of Finland for hosting this highly significant LDC Future Forum conference here. I also thank UNU-WIDER and LDC5 Monitor for arranging this wonderful session and giving me the opportunity to participate. Since 1971, LDCs have progressed significantly in their socio-economic fronts due to generous international support measures and global efforts to address their vulnerability and structural weakness. Bangladesh is one of the most successful utilizers of these ISMs, especially in its manufacturing sector, garments, ready-made garments, and pharmaceuticals. If I would like to say about Doha Program of Action and SDG, achievement in SDG, Bangladesh is firstly focusing on investing in people so that no one is left behind. In Bangladesh, the rate of poverty came down to 18.7% in 2022, while it was 31.5% in 2010. Bangladesh ranked 71 out of 146 countries in 2022 in Global Gender Gap Index. According to Human Development Report 2021-22, Bangladesh ranks 129 among the 191 countries in Human Development Index, surpassing few of our neighboring countries. Ensuring universal quality education would be critical for staying afloat in the era of fourth industrial revolution. And the literacy rate in Bangladesh rose to 74% in 2022 from 57.9% in 2010. and gender parity in enrollment in other spheres have also increased significantly. The digital infrastructure is already established with about 97% of the students having access to some remote learning mode, computer, internet, etc. And vocational, there are many vocational training institutes in our countries who is imparting training to our young learners. Despite these leaps in education, there remain many underlying difficulties that the education sector needs to address. Bangladesh ranked 112th out of 138 countries in Global Knowledge Index, indicating countries' weak performance in terms of knowledge infrastructure. For any country, the technical skill sector is crucial for continuing on development trajectory. There is a need. Bangladesh has, the government of Bangladesh has realized that there is a need to introduce competency-based standards in technical education, and government has introduced accordingly so that the existing skill gaps between the skills demanded by the employers and skills sought by the skills taught by the education centers can be minimized. The Bangladesh High Tech Park Authority, Sheikh Kamal IT and incubation centers in different districts are providing necessary training on IT, engaging technologies, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, blockchain, big data, cloud computing, and Bangladesh National Skill Development Authority is working for skill development in line with the national demand and international demand, so that our young population, as Bangladesh is at demographic dividend at this present, so this skilled manpower can bring prosperity to the country further. However, given the deepening digital divide in the country, a lot needs to be done with regard to globally demanded skills in utilizing frontier technologies. Technology transfer from developed countries in compliance with Article 66.2 of the TRIPS agreement to bridge start digital and technological divide. I think Bangladesh is focusing on getting, I think, support from the LDC5 Monitor in translating these provisions of WTO agreement into reality, so that LDCs and all Bangladesh and other countries who are on the trajectory of development can widely benefited from this. Weak R&D in industries, inadequate. Yes, in Bangladesh, the FDI is hovering around 2%, and technology transfer can only be possible through international, I think, cooperation from the transfer from the developed country either or through the FDI. Otherwise, it will be difficult for a country like Bangladesh and other LDCs. If I would like to say about the supporting structural transformation of the economy, yes, Bangladesh once was an agrarian country. It has advanced to the manufacturing countries, though Bangladesh has already attained food sufficiency through mechanized agricultural practices, but the service sector, which I think accounts 53% of Bangladesh GDP, if we count for export earnings, out of $63 billion in 2023 to 2023, the contribution of service sector is only 7.49%, which is only around 11% of export. This is due to the capacity constraints and I think congenial local environment in promoting structural transformation in service sector. In agriculture, in agriculture, though we have $1 billion export dollar, but I think value addition through processing, it is important for Bangladesh. Bangladesh is one of the least diversified economy, and we are highly dependent on ready-made garments export. I think Bangladesh has prioritized and provided incentive to other sectors, but ready-made at the lower end product, it requires less rigorous technical expertise. That's why Bangladesh has become successful, although the innovative entrepreneurs, they have contributed strongly in this regard. But in other sectors, Bangladesh cannot reap the benefit due to the standard issue, international standard issue, and other issues and product development issues that requires technology transfer. So in this regard, Bangladesh is lagging behind. Bangladesh, yeah. Thank you. If I would like to mention about the environmental, climate change, environmental vulnerability, a recent study of Cornell University finds that extreme heat and flooding could lead to a loss of over 65 billion export earnings and 1 million job loss in Bangladesh. It's one kind of projection. Combating adverse effects of climate change, Bangladesh is working. It's a critical issue for Bangladesh. Also, there are many issues, EU carbon border adjustment mechanism, due diligence, ESG issues, all these issues which requires Bangladesh to invest heavily in green technology, in recycling, reusing product. Bangladesh is doing its best to comply with the international standards in the fronts of labor rights, human rights, and also environmental issue. I would like to conclude that DPOA has special significance for Bangladesh because in the context of global crisis, especially I think economic crisis around the global due to COVID-19, war in Ukraine and other issues, Bangladesh need a global, effective global partnership for sustainable development, and it is imperative to extend LDC-specific support measures to Bangladesh, especially if tips waiver, Bangladesh will suffer in pharmaceutical sectors which save millions of patients out of poverty and the critical diseases. So the support structure should be trade, investment and technology transfer driven instead of aid-based development cooperation to make resolution smooth and irreversible. Thank you for patient hearing.
Thank you very much for this presentation. It is clear that the structural transformation in Bangladesh is a special case because due to the size of and structural transformation, of course, cannot be the same in Tuvalu and Bangladesh. But there is a common point: is a sea level rise, which is a threatening event in both cases. But thank you for all these informations. Nous avons pas encore le Mozambique, non? Non, alors nous allons passer aux réactions qui étaient attendues à la fois du secrétariat du Commonwealth et de RIPO. Est-ce que, Naïd Bachid, vous pouvez en 2 minutes, pas plus, avoir une petite réaction parce que je voudrais que la discussion puisse aller autour de la table et nous devons terminer dans 7 minutes.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I'm Neil from the Commonwealth Secretariat, and it's a great privilege for the Commonwealth to be part of this LDC5 Monitor. As was mentioned earlier, we were part of the LDC4 Monitor, and I'm pleased to say that in this process so far, I can see that all 4 of the partner countries that have been mentioned are Commonwealth members, so we're standing by to support the process for the LDC5 Monitor in any way that we can. In respect to my reactions, I just wanted to very briefly speak a bit about some of the indicators that I think will be really important for us to track as part of the monitor process. And the first one is really to focus around how we can effectively capture and track the multi-dimensional and complex nature of LDC vulnerabilities. There are a number of different indicators that can maybe serve this purpose. The UN has a multi-dimensional vulnerability index, And the Commonwealth has also developed our own Universal Vulnerability Index, which I think could be a useful resource in this context. It considers 3 types of structural vulnerability on an economic sense to external and natural shocks, on a physical sense through a climate change index, and through a socio-political vulnerability index. And it also considers issues around structural vulnerability and structural resilience, which are crucial in this context for LDCs. There's a structural resilience index which looks at things like physical and human capital, income per capita, and infrastructure. And there's a non-structural resilience index. And I know Patrick is very familiar with this index. I'm sure he might have more to say on it. The next point I wanted to make is that we already have a number of indicators in the global space that look at productive transformation and development of productive capacity. And I think the thinking that we should have for the monitor is how we can use these more effectively to identify and address gaps in productive capacity within LDCs. I'm talking about, for example, the UNCTAD's Productive Capacities Index. There are also the Productive Transformation Policy Reviews, which we heard about yesterday. And I think we need to make full use of these to diagnose where there are gaps that need to be addressed and where we need to push investment to address these gaps in LDCs. The third point I wanted to make was around the inclusion of indicators that measure the capacity for innovation in LDCs. I think this is a gap that needs to be looked into. We know that LDCs have very weak science, technological, and innovation bases. I think we can take that as a given. And this places them at a disadvantage, and I think the disadvantage is growing because of the fact that we're in an increasingly knowledge-driven economy just globally. So the point here is how can we better capture these technological capabilities in LDCs and how they are improving over time. One example of an indicator we could use here is WIPO's Global Innovation Index, which looks at innovation outputs and inputs. But I think one of the issues here, and it relates to a broader point, is that there's limited coverage of LDCs. There are currently only 21 LDCs in that index. So I'll conclude on my final point related to that is around the need to support data collection in LDCs. I think that's a critical gap that needs to be addressed. And here I think it's important that we look more to national data sources that are available in LDCs. So perhaps as part of the monitor process, we could look at where there are gaps in statistical agencies within LDCs that could be addressed with the support of the monitor partners. And I've seen my time's run out, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this point. For these points, I written one word among others: capacity d'innovation, innovation capacity to be reinforced in. Let's see. The second reaction is from Donald Murray. Is there? Yes. Yeah. Okay, please, in 2 minutes, if you can.
Thank you very much.
You are director of. RIPIOA. Can you say in a few words what is RIPIOA?
Thank you very much, moderator. RIPIOA is a think tank based in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, working closely with our policymakers to support them in designing of the evidence-informed policies. And I'm very pleased that the Executive Secretary from Planning Commission already made his intervention, and my contribution will actually also refer to his concern on the slow structural transformation despite many years of positive growth in GDP. The first one, I think we need to really focus on tracking the productive capacities. There are some indicators, as Neil already mentioned, but we can decompose this further, looking more at the local context, to be able to identify areas where domestic policy actions can target, but also international support measures to address these bottlenecks to productive capacities across the key productive sectors. The second one is this issue of demographic dividend. It appears that many African countries are likely, many LDCs, including sub-Saharan African countries, are likely to experience delayed demographic dividend. So I think we need to be able to track to see where are these youth, where is the labor from the youth going, what is it doing, how productive it is. Tanzania, for example, now we are talking about 60% of the population aged below 25. This is very critical. We really need to be able to see how this labor can be better organized rather than leave it as fragmented as it is, majority of it flowing into the informal sector. I think this is key. And the final point is on vulnerability. We know that definitely the vulnerability of country translates into vulnerability of households. So we need to be able to track this beyond the poverty numbers that if we're talking of the objective of ending poverty, leaving no one behind, we have to be aware that even in countries where poverty is declining, but a lot of these households remain vulnerable. A small shock can lead to a lot of people dropping back to poverty, let alone these significant global shocks like COVID-19, the Ukraine crisis, but even the decline in the rate of growth of China, which have affected the commodity prices from Africa, has had a lot of impact on many households that were depending on commodity exports. Let me stop here in the interest of time. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup de ces remarques extrêmement pertinentes. Permettez-moi, avant de donner la parole à la salle, de relever, je vais commencer en français, 2 points très importants dans votre intervention. L'un qui a été un peu omis au cours de la discussion de ces 3 jours, c'est le dividende démographique. Et dans la transformation structurelle des PMA, qui ont un taux de dépendance démographique extrêmement important, la transition démographique est certainement un point crucial dans la transformation structurelle, on va le dire encore, des PMA. Donc c'est un point qu'il faut avoir à l'esprit, notamment dans nos indicateurs de transformation. Et l'autre point, c'est de dire que la vulnérabilité, c'est pas seulement quelque chose qui doit être mesuré à l'échelle des pays. Quand on fait un indicateur comme le MVI ou le UVI du Commonwealth, on cherche à comparer les pays entre eux. Donc on doit avoir l'unité de mesure, c'est une unité nationale. Et ce qui est important, et ce que justement peut permettre de faire le LDC5 Monitor, c'est pour certains pays, regarder la vulnérabilité à une échelle beaucoup plus territoriale et microéconomique. Je dois dire, par exemple, pour les indicateurs de vulnérabilité au changement climatique, nous avons à la FERDI monté un indicateur de vulnérabilité physique au changement climatique, et pour certains pays, nous le décomposons sur un plan territorial, parce que c'est un type de vulnérabilité qu'on peut analyser à l'échelle territoriale. Nous avons des données géolocalisées pour l'instabilité pluviométrique, le réchauffement, etc. Et donc, il est possible de porter cette analyse de la vulnérabilité à une échelle beaucoup plus microéconomique. Et votre point est très important. Nous devons, dans le cadre de ce moniteur, avoir présent à l'esprit ces indicateurs subnationaux, si je puis dire. Voilà. Excusez-moi, j'ai intervenu en français. Je pense que la traduction vous aura transmis les points. Est-ce qu'il y a des interventions dans la salle? Ah. S'il vous plaît.
Thank you, moderator, and good morning to ladies and gentlemen. Let me take this time to thank as well the United Nations UNOHR-LLS for this invitation, as well as the government of Finland as well with OECD. My name is Daphne Muzawazi. I'm a senior program officer at the African Union Development Agency, NEPAD, and our task really is the development agency for the African Union is to support coordination and execution of priority regional and continental projects to promote regional trade and also the realization of our Agenda 2063 vision. So, I mean, coming back to the topic of the day, as African Union as well, we are coming back to revitalize our focus on social protection and financial inclusion as one of the main recommended intervention towards vulnerabilities on the African continent. And looking at least development countries, we have of our 55 member states of the African continent, 33 of those are African countries, and we are also tasked and mandated to help and assist in strengthening their capacities to deal with shocks, to deal with key areas such as food and nutrition, energy, water, infrastructure, and etc. So already now the African Union has developed a protocol to the African Charter on Human Rights and People's Rights, and then the rights of citizens to social protection and social security as well. And also affirming that social protection is a human right, and that's also encompassed in our Agenda 2063 vision of a prosperous Africa based on inclusive growth and social development, which calls for a high standard of living for African citizens as well. So just to touch on three main points in terms of indicators and policies and how the African Union Development Agency, with its coordinating and convening power to bring in member states to kind of focus and channel their efforts, resources, and targets on social protection to address some of the vulnerable communities, we're looking at three main issues really, which focus on need for strengthening the governance and administration of social protection systems, and how do we work together now to support especially the issue of preparing our institutions and capacitating them with the right human resources and technical capacities to prepare them for shocks, also for resilience, and also to be able to channel a lot of resources towards vulnerable communities. Secondly, the issue of financing. Of course, we know that's a huge challenge, and how do we then work with our institutions as well so that there is sustainable and equitable financing and execution of budgets to be able to tackle issues of vulnerability. Thirdly, the issue of data. I think we've been hearing that for the past 3 days, that there really needs to be a digital convergence or digital convergence system where we come up with how social protection systems can be interoperable, and then see how we merge a lot of these systems that are coming from the different regional economic communities, and see how that can be channeled and mainstreamed into one sort of blanket intervention area when it comes to social protection. And of course, the need for sound, strategic, and shock-sensitive technical approaches to organize and strengthen our social protection and inclusion systems, and also have the human capacity capacities in place to be able to tackle some of these issues. So from the African Union Development Agency point of view, I think for us also is to come in and inject some sort of support into our institutions, to have them prepare, to have them design policies, to have them have data and information systems that are ready-made and ready-set to develop policies and legislations and programs that improve standards of living of vulnerable communities. And also, how do we develop integrated and comprehensive social protection systems? So that's one area that I would want to highlight as AUDA, NEPAD, on how we can come in and also help under this LDC5 Monitor as well. Thank you. I have my colleague, Mr. Lukovi Seke. He can also complement. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Je crois comprendre que nous devons interrompre pour pouvoir donner la parole à notre ami Koubal et la prochaine session à l'heure. S'il n'y a pas une autre intervention, mais très brève, s'il vous plaît. C'était intéressant de terminer par le NEPAD, donc d'avoir une vue panafricaine. Qui a demandé la parole? C'est le professeur.
Thank you, Professor Patrick. I actually missed part of your French, so I couldn't really follow it. Sorry for that. No, I think one point I really want to make that when you look at the indicators for the LDCs, especially for monitoring, the macro and trade indicators, they are readily available in most of the cases. But the real challenge is the social indicators and the climate change indicators. Because in many LDCs, to have the social indicators, the surveys are not done on a regular basis. That's why you make some predictions or projections, and which may not really reflect the reality. So I think I would just urge that how to address this challenge, especially to invest on the capacity building of the data collection with respect to the social indicators and climate change indicators? Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's a very important point, but we have to close now because I am under the constraint of the time schedule put by my friend Kumal. And just to react on your point, I think that's very important. That it's precisely the role of the monitor with his close contact to think tank of global South countries to check the validity and the reliability of the indicators used at the international level. And you may have remarked that in the presentation of the MVI, the Multidimensional Vulnerability Index, an idea which was set up at the beginning at the Committee for Development Policy of the UN, the idea to have vulnerability profile. So it's a deeper look at the factors of vulnerability at the country level, and as I said, even at the subnational level, which is possible now for many variables due to all the information collected by geolocalization and internal IA we talked about yesterday. So that's a very important point, and that is a point on which the monitor, with some selected countries, can contribute by giving some new elements for the vulnerability profiles recommended by the high-level panel. Thanks. So thank you very much, all of you. And we have a stop with 10 minutes, something like that?
We can be 11:15 sharp, but we have to start the session at 11:15 sharp because of some colleagues who are tied for the street, virtually. So 11:15 sharp, back. Thank you. I just want to say, because I'm sorry we had to, we didn't have much of that discussion. We will have about 25 minutes or so, or maybe about 30 minutes at the end for more participation from over here. So we're trying to make sure there is enough time for that to happen. But sorry that we had to rush a little bit this session. Thank you.
That will be very important, because otherwise
Yeah.
our views and points will not be...
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Merci.
sunrise in my eyes. Just like a new day, I breath of fresh air in my life. I don't know how, don't know why, but I'll be toasting all my life. My boots and briefcase are waiting at the door. My ride sweeter to meet the one I love. I don't know how and don't know why, but I'll be toasting all my life. Oh, it's sweeter the first time around. Oh, it's sweeter the time here and now. Oh, it's sweeter the first time around. Oh, it's sweeter the time here and now. I played the dice right and let the good times roll. One knee and one ring, forever it's our show. I don't know how and don't know why, but I'll be toasting all my life. Tomorrow's never promised, but now is the time for hopes arising. Tomorrow's never promised, but now is the time for change that starts today. Whoa.
we build our prisons, holes in the walls. Sunlight we hide from to cover our faults. We alter actions to suit what we fear. The colors slowly fading, seals in our ears. But we can hear now, we can hear loud and clear. Bells in our stomachs when truth is here. Now we can hear loud and clear. Bells in our stomachs when truth is here. Possessions hold us, fall to the brim. The weights they keep us from flight or from swim. How vast the fields are, the oceans and skies. We lose our sight of, cover our eyes. But we can hear now, we can hear loud and clear. Bells in our stomachs when truth is here. Now we can hear loud and clear. Bells in our stomachs when truth is here. Now we can hear loud and clear. Bells in our stomachs when truth is here. Now we can hear loud and clear. Bells in our stomachs.
Yes, but it's, I think we are more than the number of...
No, I think that, yes. Let's see. Is that a, let's see. So we are, yeah. Finland and Netherlands. So can you see the Netherlands gentleman? Not sure. Let's see where he is. Oh yeah, I'll ask him to come on stage. Yeah. There's not enough chairs. So I think the clicker should. All right, let's get started because we have a certain time constraint. And so, yeah. You can introduce yourself and me.
Yes.
Yeah. So this session is the second substantial session of the LDC5 Monitor event is on international support measures, ISMs in short, which we heard a little bit about on the second day of the program yesterday afternoon. On this particular issue, what we want to try and do is to understand the challenges that LDCs face in accessing ISMs, preferential trade access, development finance instruments, and so on, And so we want to hear exactly the challenges and what one can do to try to make it easier to access ISMs. Also to hear from our development partners and how they can support the process of making ISMs more easier to access. And also there's a rather complicated question that has come up that is definitely we have to think about is when we are thinking of LDCs graduating, they might lose preferential trade access to export markets in different sectors. So what can we do to try and make sure that process is as smooth as possible? Because otherwise it creates strong disincentives for LDCs to graduate if they were to lose a lot of their shares of the world export market. So we need to think a little bit about that. So what I want to do is to try to first have colleagues from the WTO and the UN Technology Bank for LDC speak at the beginning. And then we're going to have our colleagues from the different development partners to speak in turn. And then we have a very short presentation from Ferdi, Soso Piunduno, and Matthew Boschicho to speak a little bit about how to measure, how to think of ISMs and how to measure vulnerability indices in the context of ISMs. And then we're going to move on to hearing from our LDC partners to hear how they think about the discussion that we're having on the support that they need on ISM. So that's the sort of structure of this discussion. I do think, taking point that came up in the flow, from the floor today earlier, that we need to have some time for discussion. So we'll try to create some space in this session for discussion, but we're going to make sure we'll have 30 minutes at the end for a general discussion around what we've been talking about today, because it will be very unfortunate if we don't hear your voices in the discussion on the LDC5 Monitor. So we promise we'll do that. So I'm going to first ask Jose Roberto Sanchez Fung, who's so kind to join us pretty much at the last minute, and he's going to talk. He's at the WTO, so I'm going to introduce him. He's the permanent mission of the Dominican Republic to the WTO and UNCTAD, and also affiliated with Western Michigan University. And Jose is going to speak a little bit about how the WTO sees ISM, especially on preferential trade access, and I know he's been working quite a bit in the WTO on that. Jose, thanks so much for joining us. Over to you.
Good morning, everyone, and Good morning. Can you hear me now? Okay, thanks. First and foremost, Director Sen, for inviting me this morning to contribute to this session. As you mentioned, it's last minute, but it's a privilege to be able to contribute today with your discussions. And I will focus my brief intervention on the outcomes achieved at the Ministerial Conference in Abu Dhabi regarding development and the WTO's work. And just remind you, I am the Dominican Republic's ambassador to the World Trade Organization and UNCTAD here in Geneva, and was also during the last year chairing the Committee on Trade and Development here at the WTO, and also facilitating the work in the subcommittee on least developing countries. In that regard, I've been involved in several decisions that we reached at the Ministerial Conference. Let me move on to the development package achieved at the Ministerial Conference in Abu Dhabi. The first, relating to the least developing countries, is a ministerial decision to support the smooth transition for countries graduated from the least developing countries category. We'll say more about the specific elements in this decision later. And we also have a ministerial declaration on the precise, effective, and operational implementation of special and differential treatment, with particular emphasis on the agreements on sanitary and phytosanitary measures and on the agreement on technical barriers to trade. Another declaration that affects the developing countries is that on small economies. We commit to working on several aspects related to them. These are the three key elements, and I also should mention that we have several paragraphs in the Abu Dhabi Ministerial Declaration that deal with the development dimension of the WTO's work. We have a paragraph on special and differential treatment, another paragraph on LDCs under vulnerabilities and special needs in general, and another paragraph on disasters caused by natural hazards and how they are particularly important for LDCs. In the Abu Dhabi Declaration, we also note that another decision was reached last October here in Geneva at the General Council, and what we call Annex A of the package to support the smooth transition of LDCs recently graduated from the LDCs category. And that decision focused on the duty-free and quota-free market access for LDCs recently graduated from the category. That decision was reached, I emphasize, here in Geneva in the General Council in October, and is seen as part of the package of recent measures to support LDCs and recently graduated countries from that category. Now, let me go back to the ministerial decision from Abu Dhabi, and it focuses concretely on Article 24 of the Dispute Settlement Understanding. And that provision has been extended for 3 years, and it deals with the exercise of due restraint in relation to any matter that is dealt with at the dispute settlement, under the dispute settlement understanding. And the other element that ministerial decision contains relates to LDC-specific technical assistance that will also be extended for a period of 3 years for a country that has recently graduated from the LDC category. And this is the development package and the specific elements that focus on supporting the transition from out from the LDC category. Thank you, Professor Sen, again for inviting me, and I hope you have a productive rest of the meeting.
A very important meeting, so we're not going to keep you any longer. But thank you again for joining us for this particular session. So I would now move on to Federica Arin-Falomi. Federica is officer in charge, the UN Technology Bank for LDCs. Federica, from your perspective or your organization's perspective, what is it that one can think about in supporting LDCs on the graduation process, specifically around ISMs? Over to you.
Thank you very much, and once again, thank you for having me in this important discussion. I'm very happy to see the renewed efforts and commitment on the LDC5 Monitor, and I really hope we can join forces over the course of the next years to really strengthen action and monitoring of the actions related to implementation of the Doha Program of Action. Now, the United Nations Technology Bank for the LDCs, as you've all heard in the past few days, it was named a few times because it was a very important outcome, let's say, specifically dedicated to the least developed countries as itself a support measure, an international support measure to these countries, as an outcome of the Istanbul Program of Action for the LDC. So the previous, let's say, conference, the previous outcome. But this year, last year in the Doha one, was again reinforced in its mandate from member states, indicated it as a focal point on science, technology, and innovation for the least developed countries, particularly to support the process of building productive capacities and enhancing structural transformation. So very much related to the discussions that we had in the past 2 days and particularly today. And I mean, we've heard it quite a lot over the course of the past 2 days, how important technological development is for achieving structural transformation and how important the development of innovation capacity is within this process. And the fact that despite significant investments, as we've heard this morning as well from the LDCs, which are really putting in place substantial efforts in this direction, still the gap is quite wide, and there is a challenge in this concept of and possibility of really leapfrogging and catching up with more developed economies. So this is something that, unless it's tackled quite urgently in the coming years and decades, not only will be very hard to achieve the objectives set forth and the target in the Doha Programme of Action, but also in the SDG agenda, which is basically spanning over the same time frame. So in this regard, and from the perspective of the Technology Bank, which is an institution that was set up and established exactly to facilitate technology transfer for the least developed countries and support these countries in building capacities in science, technology, and innovation, I think there is already quite a substantial discussion going on at the international level on support measures to facilitate technology transfer. It has been mentioned already yesterday afternoon, this morning, the Article 66.2 of the TRIPS is a very clear example of the commitments that the least developed countries have requested, have negotiated, and have been put forth also by developed economies to provide incentives specifically to enterprises and institutions to really facilitate the process of transfer of technologies. However, unfortunately, what we've seen so far is not nowhere near the need and the gaps that need to be addressed. So from my perspective, from the perspective of the Technology Bank, I would say then even before rethinking the measure themselves or itself, there's a need of actually putting forth more efforts to implement it to its full extent. And in this respect, one of the key points and the key actions that the Technology Bank has put in place to facilitate the process of technology transfer is this mapping exercise, or what are the specific technological needs that the countries have. And we've heard it over the past 2 days. We know it very well. Technological needs are wide and span across many different sectors. We've picked up 4 areas of primary importance that have come out prominently across all the technology needs assessments that we've conducted. And these are healthcare, education, ICT, skills development, and agriculture, of course, as well as climate resilience, environment, and energy access. So these are really the 4 broad, let's say very broad areas that will require enhanced effort in the coming years. And on this, even as a technology bank itself, so as sort of an instrument of international support to the least developed countries, we are seeing it how hard it is to actually then act on the needs once identified. So in a sense, mapping the needs is the easiest part, despite the fact that it does take a lot of effort and takes a lot of time. 45 countries are a lot of countries, and while there are commonalities, of course, every country has its own context and needs, so it needs to be looked at in depth for every specific countries. But then the extent to which technologies are really made available or are supported for transfer to the least developed countries still needs to be strengthened and further promoted at every level, and particularly from developed countries. Now we've seen it a bit of a strengthened commitment through the reporting mechanism on specifically Article 66.2, but a lot of it is actually focused broadly on developing countries, not specifically on least developed countries, and also broadly including technical assistance, ODA, not necessarily specific measures and incentives for enterprises to be actually moving towards technology transfer towards the least developed countries. And one of the, data that was mentioned yesterday by the Under-Secretary General, we know the FDI that is one of the, let's say, key tools of facilitating this process, as well as actually been decreasing towards the least developed countries. So these are not reassuring factors, and I think these are factors that the international community needs to take into account urgently if we are to think about how best to implement the Doha Program of Action and achieve its targets. And one last point I do want to make is that the Technology Bank was established and set up particularly with the idea of supporting countries after graduation. So the support is accessible up to 5 years after the graduation process. So that again is an indicator of the extent to which the commitments are there on paper and are available, but then the capacity to act on them needs to be strengthened. I will stop here in the interest of time, but thank you.
Thank you, Federica. I mean, obviously, the UN Technology Bank is very important. And we saw in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic with vaccine production in the global south, especially sub-Saharan Africa, how intellectual property rights come in the way of production in pharmaceutical production in Africa, around the fact that patent production was provided to a lot of companies based in the global north. So, and those kind of discussions which are quite controversial and difficult, but hopefully there will be some progress on that. So now what I want to do is bring in the voices of our different partners. We have colleagues from Netherlands, from France, Finland, and Turkey. And I'll start with our colleague from Netherlands. If you could just introduce yourself and just say, and what I think we could speak a little bit about is what can, say the Netherlands can do in supporting ISMs, also thinking about new measures in ISMs, going beyond traditional measures, because now we're talking about green transformation, digital transformations, so going beyond standard preferential trade access and around, and also developing finance instruments. What else can we bring to the table around ISM? So it would be good to reflect a little bit on that for all of you here. Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you. Does it work?
I think it's.
Hello? Or did I switch it off? Hello?
We need the mic here on.
Coming.
Yeah.
Hello? Yeah. Okay. So my name is Martijn Engels. I work for the Foreign Ministry of the Kingdom of the Netherlands as a senior advisor to our Director General for International Cooperation. And as it's the first time I take the floor, I just want to thank the government of Finland for this excellent past few days, organized together with the Office of the High Representative for Least and Landlocked and the SITS, of course, not to forget. Just as a first thing to say on this is that we currently have a caretaker government in the Netherlands, so we'll move into new policy development hopefully pretty soon. But over the past 2 years, or the past 10 years, I think the Netherlands has been at the forefront of combining aid and trade, and I think we've been pushing the agenda to make sure that there is much more convergence between the aid and trade agendas, and make sure that that this is coherent and works to benefit from each other. We also just recently came up with an Africa strategy, which also lays out a complete different way of engaging with the countries on the African continent. Just because we think it's the way it should be, but also because we think that the dynamics, and I've been working in the permanent mission of the Kingdom of the Netherlands to the UN over the past 5 years, we just see that the dynamics is shifting, and that the way we engage with each other is moving to a different level, which I think is a good thing, as it is based more on an equal footing, which I think it's been very necessary. I think it's also important to emphasize that apart from all new measures, I think there are a lot of commitments made by developed countries that still need to be implemented. So instead of talking about all kind of new commitments, we have to make sure that whatever has been committed to is actually being taken forward.
what the Netherlands has been focusing a lot, and I think a lot of people talk about, and we've been talking about the past 2 days as well, about the Summit of the Future as an important marking point. But what I see is also that, at least for the LDCs, the Financing for Development conference in early 2025 is at least as important, or even more important, because what we've seen as well is that the level of funding is to the LDCs has been decreasing, and there is a high need also with reform of the MDBs, and another engagement towards LDCs is highly necessary. We've in the Netherlands, we've been focusing a lot on innovative financing. In that sense, blended finance is something that we've been focusing a lot, because also we try to make sure that the private sector is getting more involved in the LDCs, and we see that is actually only possible when we work with guarantees and blended financing. So that's something that we've been focusing a lot. Finally, my last point would be, I mean, my focus, I'm more on the aid side. So I think the whole issue about policy coherence is a very important one. Aid is just a fraction of what we could and should do with regard to policy coherence, in order to make sure that, for example, on the access to markets, for example, there's a bigger stride in order to make sure that the economies in the south are actually part of a global economy instead of being left aside. So that's my intervention. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we hear from France, and you can introduce yourself, please. Thank you.
Mon nom est Agnès Kukierman, je suis ambassadrice de France en Finlande. Permettez-moi tout d'abord de remercier nos partenaires du Centre de développement de l'OCDE, de l'Université des Nations Unies et de Ferdi pour l'organisation de cet événement. La pleine mise en œuvre du programme de la conférence de Doha est une priorité, et elle passe par un suivi fidèle et précis des engagements qui ont été contractés, et par le déploiement de nouvelles solutions innovantes en soutien au PMA. Le LDC5 Monitor contribue à ces deux objectifs en mettant sur un pied d'égalité voix du Nord et du Sud. Et pour cette raison, nous en avons soutenu le lancement. À Doha, nous avons tous ensemble rappelé notre attachement à la nécessité de continuer à fournir au PMA des mesures de soutien spécifiques. Force est de constater que ces mesures de soutien international n'ont jusqu'à présent pas été en mesure d'atteindre les objectifs fixés, et il est donc essentiel de comprendre pourquoi cet échec collectif. Sans aucun doute, les crises multiples et interconnectées que nous traversons depuis 3 ans jouent un rôle. La dégradation des conditions de financement et les conséquences mondiales de l'agression russe à l'encontre de l'Ukraine, avec son impact sur les prix de l'énergie et des denrées alimentaires, ont lourdement affecté les PMA. Mais nous devons aussi remettre en question notre manière de faire, qui n'a pas permis d'apporter une réponse efficace aux vulnérabilités structurelles auxquelles font face les PMA. Un premier élément de réponse concerne la capacité institutionnelle des PMA à tirer pleinement partie des mesures de soutien dont ils bénéficient. J'en ai entendu parler hier lors des différentes interventions. Et pour ne prendre qu'un exemple, les mesures de soutien au commerce, on a bien vu que si certains PMA en tirent tout le bénéfice et arrivent à s'intégrer dans la chaîne de valeur régionale et mondiale. Ça n'est pas le cas de tous les pays et les PMA qui restent pour leur majorité à l'écart des flux commerciaux mondiaux. Et à ce titre, la cible fixée à doigt de doubler l'aide au commerce d'ici la fin de la période de mise en œuvre est essentielle. Et tous les États concernés, y compris la France, doivent prendre leur juste part à cet effort de renforcement des capacités. Le commerce intrarégional, constitue à ce titre un formidable moteur de développement. Aux côtés de nos partenaires européens, nous avons par exemple lancé une facilité d'assistance technique qui doit accompagner de nombreux PMA dans la mise en œuvre de la zone de libre-échange continentale africaine, qui peut jouer un rôle d'accélérateur clé pour toute la région. Au titre bilatéral, notre assistance technique a également développé un appui au développement d'indications géographiques dans plusieurs PMA par le biais d'une facilité pour les indications géographiques. L'objectif est de donner aux PMA les moyens de s'insérer dans les chaînes de valeur selon des termes favorables qui permettent de développer emploi de qualité au niveau local tout en favorisant la plus grande transparence pour les consommateurs. Ça a été dit hier également, il n'y a pas de solution unique et la transformation structurelle ne sera possible que si elle est entièrement prise en charge par les PMA eux-mêmes. Et à ce titre, je pense que la plateforme d'apprentissage que constitue le LDC5 Monitor, avec un investissement par les pairs, est une opportunité pour fournir des solutions efficaces. La nécessité d'une transformation structurelle et d'une réduction des vulnérabilités ne peut être satisfaite sans un financement approprié. Comme vous le savez, la France a accueilli en juin dernier un sommet à Paris qui a vu l'adoption du pacte de Paris pour les peuples et la planète, désormais rejoint par 48 pays développés, émergents et en développement. Un certain nombre de chantiers ont été lancés en suivi de ce pacte qui visent à renforcer concrètement notre architecture financière internationale, à l'adapter aux grands défis de notre temps et augmenter les financements concessionnels vers les PMA. La France est engagée pour la réallocation des droits de tirage spéciaux du FMI en faveur des pays les plus vulnérables. Cet engagement a permis d'atteindre la barre de 100 milliards de dollars et nous continuons de pousser pour la réallocation de plus de DTS inutilisés. Le sommet a permis également de porter un message fort pour le renforcement de la capacité de financement des banques multilatérales de développement. Enfin, et je rejoins ce que disait mon collègue à l'instant, il faut aussi réfléchir à des outils innovants dans le domaine de l'assurance, du dérisquage, de finances mixtes, de façon à mobiliser davantage les financements du secteur privé. Il faut également poursuivre les travaux sur le déploiement de mécanismes innovants comme les instruments de dette résilients aux catastrophes climatiques ou des dispositifs de rémunération de services écosystémiques pour les PMA qui mènent une action forte pour la préservation de leur environnement. Sorry, I stop a little bit at each time so that I check the translation is working. That's my end. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Actually, I think you brought in an additional dimension which we probably haven't talked about. So you talked about trade and technology transfer, ISMs, but around the reform in international financial architecture, SDR allocation, MDB reforms, MDB is multilateral development banks, just in case acronyms are not familiar. These are also issues that have to be talked about. So if you don't discuss the global governance arrangements and how we need to change that, then I think we are also missing an important part of the story, right? And thank you so much for bringing that in. Now I move to our colleague from Turkey, and if you could introduce yourself and perhaps 4 minutes of dimension. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Hüseyin Özen. I'm from Turkish Foreign Ministry. So I will also give a flavor of foreign policy perspective on this session. But at the outset, let me also thank our hosts, Government of Finland and the Office of the High Representative, bringing a diverse group of intellectuals and representatives from different countries and backgrounds. I enjoyed it a lot and hope this session also will contribute to that. As co-chair of the group of friends of LDCs at the UN, and also the host of LDC4 conference in 2011, I believe there are several points, principles or approaches that needs to be taken into account. One is demand-driven perspective. Last week we had Antalya Diplomacy Forum organized by Turkish Foreign Ministry with its team advancing diplomacy in times of turmoil. So we are going through a difficult period as the planet, as the people. So diplomacy should be a part of this process. So in that at that forum, we had many colleagues and high-level participation from LDCs as well, and we want to make sure that it's also a platform that LDCs can benefit from. So we organized a panel for LDCs on how to empower them. One thing that was highlighted during the panel was that LDCs, they don't need to be lectured. They know the problems, they know the vulnerabilities, they know the solutions. All they need is support. But this is critical. They don't want to be developed with a portfolio of other countries foreign perspective. They want to develop with their own priorities. So we need to make sure that the development request, the development is demand-driven, in line with their own priorities, perspectives. Otherwise, it will not be sustainable. That's one point. Second point is, perhaps many other colleagues also highlighted that, is implementation. Policies, commitments, how ambitious they are, it's not important. If you're not implementing, they're meaningless. So the Istanbul Program of Action, it was a very ambitious program. Half of the LDCs were supposed to graduate, but it didn't happen. It's not the ambitious commitments that we need, it's the implementation. Third is sustainability. Projects, policies, and perhaps more importantly, institutions, they need to be sustainable. UN Technology Bank is a great example of it. We established UN Technology Bank to help the LDCs, but establishing itself is just the beginning. Sustaining it, supporting, and making sure that it goes with its mandate, that's the sustainability that we need. Otherwise, we can create new institutions, new perspective. We can write new agendas. That's not the point. It is the implementation that we need to focus on more. And for STI, I think UN Technology Bank is a great example of it. STI can help. It's a critical asset that can help LDCs to transform better and faster. So we need to invest in STI, in LDCs, because we have an asset in LDCs, the youth. If you can use the power of the youth, if you equip them with necessary skills and can finance it and support it, then you can make it faster. You can make sure that no one is left behind. If we want to reach the 2030 targets, SDGs, you have to make sure that STI is at the top of the agenda. And finally, monitoring. Today's meeting is also very, very critical in that sense. Monitoring is a cross-cutting issue, all these four elements that I mentioned. So we need to have concrete indicators, examples, targets, some of which are already released by the office, as well as colleagues here. So we have certain indicators and targets to measure them. So all we need overall is the implementation. Thank you.
I think that's a very important point about implementation and sustainability, both I think which are sometimes overlooked, especially given our experience, as you said, the Istanbul Program of Action and now with the Doha Program of Action. So it's worth reflecting a little bit on that in the discussion. And I would now like to call a colleague from Finland, who some of you've already introduced yourself, but maybe you introduce us again, just in case others were not in the beginning of the session. So please go ahead. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you. I will speak from here. So yes, my name is Sami Pirkkala and I come from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Finland, and happy to be here with you today. Many thanks for interesting discussion this far. Graduation is a key objective of Finland's development policy, and our development policy is well tuned to support this objective. Let me pick up a few things through which we do this. As has been pointed out even here today, more than half of LDCs are currently affected by conflicts. So Finland strives to play an active role in conflict resolution. We have the Martti Ahtisaari Peace Foundation set up by President Martti Ahtisaari, which is engaged in mediation work and has been involved in conflict resolution in West Africa, Liberia, Indonesia, Afghanistan, and so forth. We also have a peace mediation center in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, through which we participate in peace mediation projects, which are often done without publicity. Our development policy has some priority areas which have specific importance for LDCs and for graduation. Key areas I want to take up here are the promotion of gender equality and education. It is also important for us to utilize digitalization in the development of societies and to strengthen structures of democratic decision-making. So these issues, peace and human security, an equal and democratic society, and a skilled population that makes use of technology and digitalization are fundaments for the development of societies, and we work actively to promote these. The current Finnish government wants to strengthen our development cooperation in the field of trade and development, and we are currently preparing a new government report on this topic. We believe that this is a matter of particular importance as countries graduate. For this purpose, we have a number of instruments that we want to use even more effectively in the future, and I take up a few of them. Our National Development Finance Institution, FinFund, gives funding for Finnish companies' on-site business activities in developing countries. This creates new business activities between Finnish companies and companies in developing countries, both LDCs and middle-income countries. We also have a financing instrument for public investments, which can be used to finance investments in the public sector in developing countries. Then the colleague from the WTO took up important topics like special treatment and preferential access, and we, Finland, work for these goals as well through our work in the WTO. Finally, as we are now in Finland, I need to take up the importance of taxation for development. I need to take this up because Finland is a taxation superpower. In Finland, 71% of Finns are happy to pay their taxes, and 94% think that taxes are important for the functioning of the welfare state. So Finland and the Finnish tax administration work together with the African Union and many individual countries to develop tax systems and strengthen domestic resource mobilization. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, the point about domestic revenue mobilization is very important because we need LDCs to essentially mobilize resources to fund important investment in education, health, and so on. So it is a very important point. Thank you so much. We now have a short presentation from our colleagues from FERDI, Matthew and Soso, and so you need to come to the podium, Matthew and Soso. I think your slides are already there, and so perhaps not more than 5 minutes, but we really want to hear what you say about around these issues of ISM measurement. Thank you.
Thank you, moderator. If I may maybe speak in French to be more clear and to be understood by people. Je vais parler en français. Donc, merci aux organisateurs de nous avoir invités à ce panel qui est très intéressant. Je vais être très court parce que je vais partager mon temps de parole avec mon collègue Mathieu Boussicha, qui aura certainement des choses encore beaucoup plus intéressantes beaucoup plus intéressantes à raconter. Depuis le début de ce forum, on a beaucoup parlé ou mis en lumière les différents handicaps structurels des PMA en termes de faiblesse du capital humain, manque de transformation structurelle, mais également, surtout les vulnérabilités. Donc, moi, je parlerai surtout d'un facteur qui est lié à la croissance, qui est un facteur très important, qui est nécessaire, notamment pour ces pays, dans l'atteinte des objectifs du développement durable, ce qui est très important. Donc, rétrospectivement, lorsqu'on veut analyser les données historiques de taux de croissance des PMA, on distingue généralement 3 phases. Hein. Une première phase qui va de 1980 à 1995, où les PMA ont affiché des taux de croissance négatifs. En ce moment où les autres pays en développement affichaient des taux de croissance positifs. Donc, il a été montré économiquement et statistiquement que la différence était très, très significative entre les deux groupes. Donc, nous avons la deuxième phase qui part de 1995 à 2019, où là, il y a un renversement de la tendance avec les PMA qui, cette fois-ci, ont affiché des taux de croissance positifs. Il y a d'ailleurs même une accélération de la tendance au début des années 2000 jusqu'en 2019. Donc, malheureusement, il y a une troisième étape, une troisième période qui part de 2019 où les crises sont passées par là. Les crises de la pandémie de Covid-19 et la crise de la guerre en Ukraine. Donc, ça a eu un impact très significatif sur les taux de croissance des PMA. Donc, les impacts sont divers. Par habitant. Les impacts sont importants quand même par secteur. À la FERDI, on s'est intéressé sur un facteur qui est très important, hein, un domaine qui est important, qui est celui de la santé. Notamment, il a été observé académiquement que les taux de croissance négatifs, les phases de récession ont très peu d'impact dans les pays développés. En revanche, dans les pays en voie de développement, les pays du Sud, l'impact, les récessions ont un impact très significatif sur les indicateurs de santé, notamment ceux qui sont liés à la mortalité, encore la mortalité infanto-juvénile. Donc ces indicateurs sont fortement impactés. Donc dans un papier que la FERDI a publié récemment dans Social Science and Medicine, il a été mis en évidence notamment que la pandémie de Covid-19, par la récession qu'elle a causé, a eu un impact significatif sur l'accroissement de la mortalité générale en Afrique subsaharienne. Et plus particulièrement, il a été, en adaptant un peu ces résultats aux pays, au PMA, il a été montré que les résultats sont quasiment pareils, ils ne bougent pas beaucoup. Donc, quel message cela renvoie au final? Je vais être très très court pour conclure. Premier message, c'est que ces différentes crises que nous avons connues récemment et qui continuent encore à courir ont mis en évidence les différentes vulnérabilités des PMA. Ils les ont d'ailleurs exacerbées. Donc ça, c'est le premier point. Deuxième point qui est très important aussi, qui est celui du renforcement. Ça, c'est une urgence. Renforcement de la résilience structurelle des PMA, d'autant plus que j'aime bien citer la formule qui est la suivante, renforcer plutôt la WRAM, W qui est withstand, donc la capacité à se relever, absorbe pour A, et R pour recover from, et M pour minimiser les impacts des chocs. Donc ça, c'est très, très important. C'est une formule qui doit être renforcée, notamment pour les PMA, pour leur permettre d'anticiper et de faire face aux impacts des chocs futurs. Merci.
Bonjour, Mathieu Boussicha, chercheur à la FERDI. Je vais aussi m'exprimer en français. Pour compléter ce qu'a dit Soso, je précise que nous avons mené un travail publié en 2019 qui essaie d'évaluer l'impact de l'appartenance à la catégorie PMA sur différentes dimensions, notamment la croissance du revenu par tête qui vient vous être présenté. Et moi, je vais vous parler de l'aide et très brièvement du commerce, mais je sais que le temps passe très vite. Sur l'aide, très rapidement, le travail économétrique que nous avions pu mener montrait ce n'est pas le statut PMA qui pouvait expliquer significativement la différence d'aide qui est supérieure structurellement dans les PMA. Ce qui est intéressant de voir aussi, c'est ce qui s'est passé depuis 4 ans et quel était l'impact de la crise Covid et de la guerre en Ukraine. Pour la crise Covid, il n'y a pas de surprise, l'aide a augmenté partout et notablement dans les PMA. Mais ce qui est intéressant, c'est de voir après que l'aide au PMA a baissé en volume, a baissé en termes de part des PMA dans l'aide totale, et elle a aussi, la part des PMA dans l'aide totale a aussi baissé quand on enlève l'aide à l'Ukraine de l'analyse. Et alors quand on enlève l'Ukraine de l'aide dans l'analyse, on voit que la part de l'aide aux pays à revenus intermédiaires de la tranche inférieure a par ailleurs augmenté. Et donc, de ce petit travail, on peut en déduire 2 choses. D'abord, qu'il y a une légère substitution de l'aide destinée aux PMA en faveur des pays à revenus intermédiaires de la tranche inférieure, d'une part, mais qu'il y a surtout un effet de substitution assez fort de l'aide destinée au PMA en faveur de l'aide à l'Ukraine qui, elle, a énormément augmenté. Et ça, évidemment, c'est assez surprenant comme résultat quand on connaît les besoins des PMA dont on parle depuis 2 jours. Et je finis très très vite. On a fait ce travail-là sur moult dimensions. Et sur le commerce, après, structurellement, il y avait une augmentation de la part des PMA sur les 20 dernières années dans le commerce mondial. Même si cette surperformance, l'économétrie montre que lorsque l'on enlève les pays pétroliers, on ne démontre pas une surperformance des PMA qui ne sont pas pétroliers, qui sont quand même la majeure partie des PMA. Et sur les 3 dernières années, c'est intéressant de noter que l'élan positif qui était constaté dans l'inclusion des PMA dans le commerce mondial s'est brutalement arrêté avec évidemment la chute des exportations de services, notamment due à l'arrêt du tourisme avec le Covid, et la stagnation, en tout cas l'arrêt de l'augmentation de la part des PMA dans le commerce des marchandises. Je vous remercie beaucoup, on a été certainement déjà beaucoup trop long, et donc je vous rappelle que ce travail-là fait le le fruit d'un ouvrage qui a été publié en 2019 sous la direction du professeur Patrick Guillemont et qui a été mis à jour récemment et qui sera disponible en ligne et dans les librairies très, très rapidement. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Soso and Matthew. It's very interesting, actually, especially what we seem to see after 2020, declining ODA shares to LDCs, declining growth, and also declining trade shares, export shares. So that's something we need to also think about, especially because it coincides now with the Doha program implementation period. Right, so I think that's a really important thing to think about. So what I want to now do is move on to our distinguished LDC partners, and I want to see if the minister from Togo is present virtually. Okay, very good. That'll be wonderful. I had a specific question. If you could answer one specific question and in 2 minutes. Two questions actually in 2 minutes. The first question is, what kind of support you would like to see from the international community on ISMs? And secondly, which specific ISM do you think is the most important to you, to Togo, in terms of graduation? And 2 to 3 minutes, if that's possible. Thank you. And you can speak in French, of course.
Merci, monsieur le modérateur. Je voudrais d'abord saluer l'organisation de ce forum et de cette session en remerciant le gouvernement de Finlande, les Nations Unies, l'OCDE et FERDI. Je m'appelle Abbé Talim et je suis le directeur général du commerce au ministère du Commerce, de l'Artisanat et de la Consommation locale du Togo. Donc c'est au nom de Madame la ministre que je prends la parole donc, pour dire qu'au-delà des efforts que les gouvernements des PME mènent sur le terrain, ces pays ont besoin du soutien de la communauté internationale. Et ceci pour relever les défis que nous avons cités depuis le début de ce forum, liés donc à plusieurs manquements, et nous sollicitons que la communauté internationale puisse aider les PME dans le renforcement des capacités productives des différentes filières. Aider donc les PME dans la transformation de ces produits à travers donc l'innovation qui sera accordée également pour renforcer les capacités techniques des PME et aussi, après cette transformation, faciliter l'accès au marché des produits des PME. Donc c'est fondamental et nous sollicitons cela. Bref, au-delà des appuis des gouvernements, la communauté internationale peut renforcer le dispositif de production pour aider les PME à produire suffisamment, à transformer et à faire écouler sur les marchés internationaux. Un programme précis que je voudrais faire illustrer, c'est le programme d'aide pour le commerce, notamment le programme cadre intégré renforcé, qui est un programme d'assistance technique de l'Organisation mondiale du commerce, donc financé par différents partenaires que je salue au passage. Ce programme a permis au Togo de multiplier la production par 10 du soja. Et comme vous le savez, le soja est un produit où les paysans tirent énormément de revenus. Donc on a constaté que le nombre d'acteurs a augmenté, le nombre de producteurs a augmenté, la production a augmenté, et on a constaté également que les unités de transformation s'installent dans le domaine, et ça permet donc d'avoir des revenus pour tous les acteurs qui sont dans la chaîne de valeur. Ça a permis également de créer des emplois, et c'est important quand même que ce programme, qui a connu un succès à travers donc, les financements de ce programme cadre intégré renforcé, que ce programme soit renforcé et continue pour le bien donc, des populations. Et ce qui a fait la réussite de ce programme dans notre pays, en fait, c'est l'appropriation nationale de ce programme, à travers donc l'expression des besoins. Et ça a permis de mettre en place des activités qui concourent donc aux résultats que je venais de donner. Ce que je voudrais également ajouter, c'est que les PMA ont besoin vraiment de s'insérer dans le système commercial multilatéral. Et la communauté internationale pourra vraiment aider à faciliter cette insertion et permettra donc de développer nos pays. Et le programme cadre intégré que je viens de citer, nous souhaitons également que ce programme puisse continuer et se renforcer davantage en faveur des PMA. Donc il faudra aussi des programmes beaucoup plus précis en faveur des PMA. Et donc nous appelons de nos voeux pour que les donateurs puissent continuer à soutenir les PMA et multiplier les filières. Si on a les résultats de plusieurs filières dans le secteur productif, nous pensons que nous aurons des résultats et que nous pourrons sortir effectivement de la pauvreté. Voilà, monsieur le modérateur, les quelques mots que j'ai par rapport à tout ce qui est dit. Je salue une fois les panélistes qui ont donné des informations pertinentes qui permettent quand même à nos pays de tirer meilleur parti. Merci, monsieur le modérateur.
Thank you so much. Actually, the soybean example is just wonderful, and I think it's such important to take concrete examples of this kind in the discussion here, and I hope we can come back to the sorts of specific examples in the discussion. And also the point about supporting production capacity in Togo and, of course, other LDCs from the international partners is also very important. So thank you so much for that. And I want to move on now to Lawrence Mafuru. Lawrence, if you could sort of, again, 2 to 3 minutes. So Lawrence is the Executive Secretary to the Planning Commission, the President's Office, Tanzania. So one is that what kind of support would you like to see from the international community on ISMs? And specifically, is there particularly which 1 or 2 ISMs that you think are really important for Tanzania's prospects of graduation? Thank you, Lawrence.
Thank you. I think I'll start with just challenging the narrative on the international support measures. For this to really work, I think it's time for the rest of the world to begin to look at LDCs as equal partners on the global development agenda. Because if I look at Africa, for example, and I think I'm happy that we start talking about the Africa Free Continental Trade Area. When you look at that, one, in the back of your mind, you have 54 countries with a population in the neighborhood of 1.5 billion people. We're talking about a GDP of about 3 trillion or something like that. That's significant at the global scale. So what I'd like to start seeing towards this support, we need to move away from support that is aid-related in the social sectors and more so into support that is aimed at strengthening framework and platforms that will help trade. And I think to begin with, there should be trade within African countries, intra-trade, really making countries in the African space, which most of them really, you see a lot of them in the LDCs category, to start working together and trade amongst each other. Because that way you will be able to create or increase incomes amongst these nations. And as a result of that, you will need to see that income trickling down into investment in social sectors. So I think the bottom line is to enhance trade between African countries and stop making these countries production centers or extractive centers. What we end up seeing in most of these LDCs, over a period of time where you're supposed to graduate and a horizon of 20 years, you end up with decommissioning programs because people have extracted raw materials, you have not developed, the economy has not transformed, and all you end up is some funds to decommission, and all the wealth has been extracted. So the narrative has to be reversed and be able to treat LDCs as a crucial partners in the global agendas and making an equal win-win kind of arrangement in terms of these initiatives. So if there's one thing that needs to really change is to make sure that value is created within the LDCs. So if it's FDI coming, it has to be FDI that will support processing of goods and services. So when we sell out, we sell value-added commodities and goods that are more valuable to the countries, in which I think for me will be a game changer in these economies. I'd like to stop here in the interest of time. Thank you.
much. That is very important, really, and we'll try and get back to this issue, this question around how to create this kind of capacity, especially in value addition in many of these activities in agriculture, manufacturing services, in LDCs. I want to now turn to Safuddin Ahmed. Safuddin, if you don't mind, again, 2-3 minutes to talk about one. How can, again, the international communities especially support Bangladesh now that's moving out of LDC status towards a post-graduation status around perhaps some of the discussion on trade, and also what are the kind of ISM that you think are really critical for the Bangladesh's progress towards middle-income status. So Saifuddin is Joint Secretary Trade Support Measures Wing, Ministry of Commerce, Bangladesh. Saifuddin, over to you.
Thank you for giving me the scope to speak out. I'm impressed and encouraged that our development partners have understood what the LDCs actually need at the critical juncture of their development. Yes, Bangladesh is a graduating LDC, and I think that first of all, the basic problem of the LDC is that over-dependence on one or two products. That is product development, diversification, and concentration within a region is also a problem. In this regard, the foremost necessary for the LDCs in terms of their competitiveness is to capacity building, especially their products, sanitary, phytosanitary, TBT, traceability, all those issues, so that their standard organizations are much more aligned with the international requirement, and that requires that these organizations should be financed, technically supported first of all, and also I think there is no or few mutual recognition agreement with the LDCs and with their developing partners, especially the developed countries. So in which areas they are lacking their capacities to engage in mutual recognition agreement so that their exports are expedited. These issues can be brought into consideration. Another issues that research and development, especially the LDCs, I can say about Bangladesh, there are more than hundreds of products we are producing and also exporting, but the volume is, most of them are volume then less than 10 million or less than 1 million. So how they can develop, there is a very few, I think, businesses, industries, they have research and development wing, also education institutions. So these institutions, their research and development wing can be developed so that they can improve their products in line with the international standard and access into the global market. Another issues that technology bank, it's encouraging that technology bank has identified our problems as there is a global commitment in line with say Article 66.2 of TRIPS agreement, that developed countries will encourage their, I think, research organization to fund and to transfer technologies to the LDC. So the technology bank can help to bridge the needs of the developing countries, specific needs, developing countries and the developed countries to fulfill this commitment. This will enhance their capacities. And from the perspective of graduation, I would like to say that after graduation, Bangladesh and some other developing LDCs, as their production cost is high, so generous ISMs help them to be competitive in the international market that will go up. And in this regard, especially I would like to mention about TRIPS waiver. TRIPS waiver, I think after graduation there will be some sort of space, breathing space, 3 years or 2 years. But with regard to TRIPS agreement, the TRIPS waiver, there is no decision still. I can say about their health infrastructure in Bangladesh is very good, especially the primary health and especially the non-communicable communicable diseases, if I say Bangladesh is now producing some patented medicines without requesting the permission of the patent holder. So after graduation, there will be renewed commitment to comply with the patent issues, and especially the insulin for diabetes, that will be much more costlier, and some other medicines will be costlier. Now Bangladesh can accommodate 98% of its domestic medicines from, I think, local production. These issues are very much prominent, I think, for Bangladesh. Thank you for giving me, and another thing, sorry, I have forgotten, another issues is that there are new norms and also standards at global front, especially developed countries, with regard to labor issues, environmental issues, and some other issues. So, and there is a matter of technology transfer. When we comply with, like to comply with the standards of global standards, especially if carbon border adjustment mechanism would like to mention, and other due diligence issues, and so these issues, these require, I think, new investment, further investment, and technology transfer, green technology, investment in green technology. So if these countries are provided technology transfer in these issues, in harnessing green technology, zero carbon technology, then this will be a game changer for their productivity and also market accessibility. Thank you so much.
This question about TRIPS, which I mean, it's come up several times. I mean, if you're expecting, say, Bangladesh to diversify away from ready-made garments into pharmaceuticals, which is already now a flourishing industry in Bangladesh, TRIPS reforms have to take place, right? I mean, that's something we need to think about. And it's very unfortunate that there's been not much progress on this, on TRIPS and intellectual property rights, as I was using the vaccine production example, really. So, you know, I mean, that's something for us to think a little bit more about. Maybe Federica can comment on that a little bit later. So what I just want to do, I think we have about 10, maybe just 10 minutes. I want to make sure 20 minutes we have for a general discussion. But just because we have panelists sitting here and also who are also from the LDC colleagues, if you have any specific questions to ask, we'll have a more generic discussion after this. But please feel free. Yes, Arjun, and waiting for the mic. And anyone else?
Thank you very much. I am very much delighted to hear such a wonderful, rich discussion on the issue of international support measure. But what is missing here since yesterday and day before is the politics of poverty. How, okay, if we try to solve problem through technical measures and miss the politics of aid, for example, I really appreciate Turkey about mentioning issue of demand-driven. The most of those international support measures are seen in LDC as supply-led. And we need to make sure that if we are talking about supporting LDCs, country ownership and use of country system is very important. It has to be demand-driven and not only technical, be it, for example, technology, finance, or knowledge. We have discussed so many things in past 3 days. But what creates this problem and what perpetuates in our part of the world? If you see our countries from the historical perspective, 100 years ago, many of us were in the same situation. We have heard about Finland, how they suffered, even 50 years back. So if we don't touch the political part of it, if we don't reform aid architectures, and if we fail to ensure country leadership, country ownership, we can't make a difference through international support measure. So look at that, okay, from the political perspective as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh, yes, there's a question from there, and this one, pressure. So let's take 2 more questions. Yes, go ahead, the mic, and then just introduce yourself very quickly. And maybe you can just reflect a little bit on the panel.
Thank you very much. My name is Nema Komba. I am from Hanken School of Economics here in Helsinki. I don't know if this is a question or a comment. Maybe it's a little bit of both. As we have seen in the way the current, global order is, we're extremely interdependent. But the benefits of trade or productivity or whatever flow predominantly towards the global north, and the problems flow towards the global south. We share this common future, but it's a very unequal sharing, so to speak. But I was wondering, in terms of international support measures, whether, our partners, our development partners, whether there is something going on locally that would change the dynamics. For example, a lot of the trade is currently dominated by very few multinationals, for example. And we talk about sustainability, but the other adequate measures that are put in place to compel these multinationals that are acting in certain ways, maybe in the global south, to ensure that there is actual sustainability. If we're diversifying economies, we're diversifying our trade or exports, and you have some big plants built in Ethiopia, are we ensuring that the workers in Ethiopia are paid actual living incomes? Are we ensuring that smallholders, farmers, SMEs in the global south are actually going to be able to participate in these value chains that we're talking about? So I was wondering if this is something, because recently the EU proposed the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of contestation, and there hasn't been, Finland itself didn't vote for it, and I think Belgium, and despite evidence that this is something that is quite needed. So I'm wondering if this is something that is being considered as part of the international support measures, ensuring more equality, ensuring that there is more inclusion, and maybe inclusion really continues to perpetuate the idea that there is power, but really there is power concentrated in one side. But not just, we don't want to be included, we want this to be fair. I'm from the global south too, so I have to say that we here. Thank you.
Thank you. It's very, very, very powerful indeed. So we have a colleague right at the back. Can you introduce yourself? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm Luko Viseke, coordinator of the African Science, Technology and Innovation Indicators Program. I have one question to this session, and then as we agree that we can also come up with the previous one. The first component is mainly related to the issue of international support, and that was one of the questions asked to me when I was presenting on day one. So it's like the issue of having a father loving more one child than others. So there is no an econometrics model to demonstrate that, and we are seeing that with what is happening in Ukraine and Africa, as well as COVID when it came in terms of issue of this vaccine distribution. So what we can do as the African Union Development Agency, considering the membership now in the G20+, where now we have 2 unions, 19 developed countries, as well as the European Union, as well as the African Union, we are going to find out if there is a possibility for the pledges to be taken to actions, because we are just observing with the nearest example when it comes to conflict. So the second aspect in terms of indicators. Okay, that was the previous session. I need to intervene through three layers. The first one, we understand that to survive on Earth, we have to focus on issues related to health, we have to focus on issues related to education, and we have to also focus on issues related to survival, meaning the income. And that covers the Human Development Index. So, and when we have the issue of life expectancy is indeed part of WASH, water, sanitation, as well as health. So, and it goes also with food security. So then when it's come to the issue of education, and we also focus on the matter of demographic dividend, as it has been flagged by our senior distinguished expert from Tanzania. So most of our least developed countries, we need to make sure that those who are depending on the workforce are too little for us to create a miracle, because the way we are going with the trend, we have to wait for 4 decades for some of the country to recover. And the final part, when it comes to science, technology, and innovation, the issue of indicators is very crucial. Why? Because we have some of the countries where the National Development Plan is not linked to other portfolio policies. Some of the leaders, they are only implementing the manifesto of the political party. And we need more innovation beyond the firms now in the government sector, because there we found the issue of not respecting good governance issue. If we don't do that, then the street will push us to a very strong and bad innovation in the government sector. So to conclude, I just need to say that we need to make sure, first of all, we secure more data and we take the level of innovation in the government sector for us to have very conducive indicators to change the narrative on the way forward. If we don't do that, then we are going just to remain like this as least developed countries, where firms will be doing their best, but the governance issue is still a matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's very, I think, very tough, too powerful, very challenging questions or comments from the floor. What I suggest is, because we have a bit of time constraint, you have to go.
Really have to go.
Okay, good. And you too, I suppose. Yeah. So perhaps you can excuse yourself now. Yes. And I just want to give time for our colleagues from Turkey, Finland, and Federica, Free and Technology Bank LDCs, just to sort of reflect on what you heard from the LDC partners and the questions that came from the floor. Like just two minutes, but it's good to get your reflections a little bit on this too. Maybe start with Turkey, perhaps. Yeah.
Thank you. Well,
thank you so much.
First point, ODA. Turkey is one of the few countries that surpassed the 0.7% target, UN target for ODA. I believe more countries, especially developed countries, need to show that they comply with their commitments, because without support and solidarity, we cannot overcome these complex global challenges. The issue of Global South, well, I just mentioned previously that we had a panel on LDCs at Antalya Diplomacy Forum. We also had a panel on Global South to make sure that the perspective of the Global South is on the agenda of the global agenda to that end. And one thing that was emphasized during the meetings, as well as consistently, and our president, always our president, His Excellency Recep Tayyip Erdogan, he has a motto of the world is bigger than 5. And this is not just a motto, it is the reality. The international system, governance system, is not working very well. We have a lot of problems. If it was working, we wouldn't need meetings like this. Apparently, we need more of this. So there is a problem of global governance. And this is why we put forward these arguments, and we believe that a fairer world is possible. Maybe one small point related to G20. Last year at the New Delhi summit, African Union became a permanent member of the G20. We also supported that process because we believe that decisions related to Africa or Global South needs to be taken with them with their consent and with their priorities. So supporting the membership of the African Union was also very much in line with our foreign policy and perspective. Thank you.
It's very important development, actually. So Federico, just a little bit of just reflection, a little bit around TRIPS, I think, came up quite a bit. So did you want to sort of just say how you see it?
I'll just highlight a couple of points. One on the issue of TRIPS, but the other one also on the demand-driven point. And I think the Doha Programme of Action has a key point where it says the primary responsibilities for these targets rest with the LDCs, but the international community has to provide support. So this is the balance that we really need to look at. So we want really to see a situation where the political will, the directionality is really set by the governments of the LDCs themselves and the partner support. And this is what we're also trying to advocate for at the Technology Bank with the needs assessment. Is really like we do not start the process unless there's a strong demand, unless there's a strong will. And this helps us prioritize as well and help us indicate priorities, because what we always say is also if you have 10, 15 priorities, then you have no priority. And we know these countries have a lot of issues to be tackled together, but I think it is really clear that there needs to be a prioritizing process, and some of the issues that are more urgent have emerged in the past 2 days. On the TRIPS, I just want to flag one point which I really think that concerned particularly the 66.2 and the reporting mechanism. I think we need to increase our efforts to get out of this mechanism of reporting activities and things that have been done and look at really what have they generated. If we use the graduation metaphors, no one will give you a degree for the number of hours you studied. You really need to achieve something, right? So even for the support towards graduation of LDCs, the development partners also need to be able to be accountable for what has their support generated in these countries, not just for the amount of measures that have been taken. And I think this I wish to see it improved, and I think the LDC5 Monitor can also contribute to that, as I know one key focus is exactly on understanding better what is the process of implementation and its efficacy.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Somebody, do you want to quickly say something or wait for the general discussion? We are most welcome to say something now.
Well,
yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can
hear
you.
Now
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
working. Yes. Yes. Well, I think this has been very interesting discussion, and I haven't been able to participate the other days of the conference, so I don't know the whole context. But what came into my mind of this discussion is that the issues of global dynamics and global governance, which the Turkish colleague also took up. In the second decade of this millennia, we had some very promising signs and promising steps. We had the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, we had the Paris Agreement, we had the Addis Ababa Action Agenda, and so forth. But this decade has brought us backwards, and I think this is a very, very very difficult situation where we are now with the COVID pandemic and in Europe with Russia's invasion to Ukraine and so forth. So maybe the earlier days you also have taken up the Summit of the Future as a possibility to change the role of the UN and also maybe get some change into these global dynamics. So in the MFA we are discussing quite a lot about this possibility and how to make most out of this future summit.
We're going to now get to Federico, so you're going to get on the podium later. Federico, sort of conclude or wrap up the sessions. And Federico, you have about, I think, 20 minutes max. I think perhaps. I'm sorry, got a little bit into your session, but over to you. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Kunal, for a very skillful moderation of a very interesting panel. And I think that these last 20 minutes of our morning are meant to discuss a bit next steps. And we would like to use these 20 minutes first and foremost to hear from you, from those of you who have not yet had an opportunity to intervene, whether what we put on the table makes sense, whether there are certain aspects that maybe should be strengthened, and whether there could be an interest in partnering. And so in order to recall a bit the context, I think that, as we said at the beginning, the three institutions that you see here, the OECD Development Center, the FERDI, and the UNU-WIDER, are highly committed to advance this process of monitoring the implementation of the Doha Program of Action in partnership with, of course, the Office of the High Representative. And the experience that we have gathered from the previous monitoring of the Istanbul Program of Action suggested us to try focusing a bit more on some specific aspects that, in our view, can trigger a kind of horizontal impact on the progress with the different targets of the Doha Program of Action, but also to focus a bit more on the implementation part. We were discussing before in the coffee break that you may have an objective of improving tax revenue over GDP. That's a laudable objective, but at the end of the day, even if you put in place all the necessary reforms and you put in place all the necessary measures, this remains something which is to some extent beyond your control, because many things may happen. Your GDP may shrink, companies or individuals may evade or elude taxation. And so if we just focus on a numerical indicator, your tax revenue to GDP ratio, we may see that this is not improving, suggesting that there has not been enough effort by the government. But if we focus on the measures that the government has put in place, we may discover that the reality is quite different. We may discover that the government has actually done whatever it could to improve tax administration, simplification, transparency, improving tax morale, etc., etc. But at the end of the day, the indicator may not change. And this very simple example applies to many others of the indicators in the Doha Program of Action. So this is why we want to combine in the monitor two types of assessment. One is to look at how the situation is evolving with a specific focus on, as Patrick said, vulnerabilities and structural transformation. So being able to tell you in 3 years' time in the midterm review, there has been progress, no progress, or sliding back. But at the same time, we want to focus on the implementation. And that's why we want to work with governments and with institutions in LDCs to look at what is going on and what reforms, what policies are being implemented and what works. And we want to do this together with all those who are interested. So I would like to use these 18, 17 minutes that we have in front of us to see whether you who are working in this space think that this approach makes sense, whether we are missing out on anything, and whether there is an interest in joining hands and moving forward, knowing that we have a timeline in front of us, which is pretty clear, midterm review, and that we have already started. And I would like to take the opportunity to thank those who engage with us, the government of France in particular, who worked with us for the launch event in Doha of the LDC5 Monitor, and those who have worked with us in the past, the government of Turkey, and others who supported us. So anyone who would like to make any suggestion, are we missing out anything? Are we on the right path? Is there an interest to join hands and to do so? Mohammed, please.
Thank you. Federico, thanks for this opportunity. One small point that I have is this. I mean, this effort is, to be honest, really a good one. And there is something that we can also learn from the past experience. And I was a bit involved in the past exercise as well. Now, going ahead, what I think is this. There is a bit of, ideological crisis when you want to get into this work on LDC5 Monitor. Partly because when you get to the country level, as you mentioned in your intervention, that you would like to work with the governments there. So obviously, the governments or the people will be asking you, like, what is the connection of this with the sustainable development goals, you see? And then the identity is lost, partly because the kind of data that you are going to use for monitoring purposes are already being tracked under the Sustainable Development Goals tracker. And if the data is not there, and as Selim Rehan has already pointed out, we know there are a lot of missing data. Now, through your interventions, maybe you won't be able to generate that kind of data. So eventually, then basically, nothing concrete comes out from this kind of intervention. But I have got one concrete suggestion to make, just a friendly suggestion, and that is where, if there would be opportunities, we would also like to come up and contribute to that process. Is that maybe this LDC5 monitoring exercise, in terms of approach, can be divided into two segments. You keep one small segment based on the data-based monitoring. That can be, exercise, getting some information from the SDGs tracker and how the countries are doing, especially LDCs. But then also you add, other issues like what kind of support the LDCs are getting from the, say, the technology bank, or has there been any kind of, new, information or interventions, that have come up into this. So there is a small section on data-driven exercise based on what data is available. And then in the other section could be on doing some, analytical exercises. I think that is very important because, those exercises will be able to help us with the inputs for informed policy-making decision, but also for global advocacy. Yeah? I can give you a bit more examples, but I'll just give you 2 or 3 examples. I think where that kind of analytical exercise would be useful. For example, you say, right now there is some opportunity for even contributing to the policy discourse with regard to the changes that could be brought in the EU GSP scheme, even for LDCs. Because you see, the EU drafted the GSP scheme, but now it has deferred its implementation, I think, from 2027. So still we have got a window of opportunity. And we know that there is the opportunity for asking for liberalization of rules of origin within the EU GSP scheme. Now, the issue for us, whether we can get into that and make some contribution so that the EU GSP scheme for LDCs can be liberalized further. Just one example. The other issue could also be the preferences, why the countries have not been able to benefit from preferences, partly because maybe the rent that arises from the preferences are being appropriated more by the importers than the countries who are exporting. So in that way, there can also be, if you can come up with some idea, the rent sharing mechanism, that can also be, quite helpful. And colleagues have pointed out the problem with the standards. If you can give some country case studies, how the standards are, coming along, what they're doing, what kind of interventions are needed, I think that will be useful. So my point was simple one, maybe a small data-driven section on the proper monitoring. But let's get into some analytical exercise that is going to be meaningful in the in the future. Yeah. Thank you so much. Sorry,
Thank you very much. Please. The mic is coming.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Actually, this was a very interesting process. It's my first time participating in this kind of event. Many different issues were discussed here, but I felt like we could include also the standardization mechanism for processes and applications, because we were talking here about the application of technology and how we implement the initiatives, how we can work all together. And it would be interesting, we have here different countries with different approaches that are participating equally in the same processes. So it would be very interesting to have a parameter or a standard where we can all achieve or look forward to. Thank you.
Thank you very much. While maybe other participants think about intervening or not, I think that we heard some interesting suggestions, and they also link up to what was said in the panel here, that we need to have a broad view of what is going on in terms of the international support, and the support taking many different dimensions, but also then look at the more granular and policy-related aspects of the production transformation process. And in this aspect, I just want to recall something that both the minister from Togo and our colleague from Bangladesh mentioned, that we have been implementing at the OECD Development Center production transformation policy reviews that try to provide a framework, if you want, for governments to think about their own transformation. Yep, thank you, Mohamed. And also provide indicators to track progress in the process of structural transformation. So these are tools that already exist, that have been tested, and I think that they could very easily be applied also to other countries. Let me see if there are other interventions or colleagues that would like to intervene. If not, I think that we can maybe wrap up, and maybe with a couple of words, and I would like to ask maybe Kunal and Patrick to join me here, and also Susanna. No, you don't want? Susanna is the master behind the scenes. We all know that she's the one making things possible. So I'm joined here my two partners in crimes, not serious crime, but would like to really thank you all for having participated this morning. And I think I spoke too much, so I will give the floor to Kunal and Patrick to say a few concluding words. Whatever you want to do.
I think we are close to the lunch break. So just want to say, we were a little bit worried actually yesterday evening, Patrick, myself, and Federico, whether there'll be interest in this particular event after 2 days of very rich discussions. And we are pretty amazed to see such strong interest here. Actually, this room is, this side of the room was completely full. And that shows there is so much interest in the LDC5 Monitor. Because I think one of the things perhaps from the discussion we had the last 2 days is that we need some concrete, absolutely practical solutions and approaches to thinking about LDC graduation. And the LDC5 Monitor perhaps provides that way for a particular set of issue indicators or issues. The DPOA is a much broader remit, of course, but around production transformation and vulnerabilities, which is, in our view, very, very important, which is why we chose those two thematic priorities in the DPOA. So I think the point here is that perhaps this LDC5 Monitor can really help in this process of graduation, and essentially, given that we are going to meet, hopefully, every year, as thanks to the support of the government of Finland in the LDC Future Forum, it can be really helping to get this discussion going on a more practical, concrete basis. So that's what we need to now move on to. And we heard some very good suggestions from all of you on how we can do that. So our challenge for us, perhaps, in the three organizations that we are involved in, the OECD Development Center, UNU-WIDER, and FERDI, is how can we actually kind of make this much more practical and action-oriented, and that we can track progress on production transformation and vulnerabilities, both using data that we can try and put together, but also around case studies, analytical work that Razak said very well, analytical exercises that can help the graduation process. So that's really going to be our next step, and let's hope that when we hopefully meet again in a year's time, we have made progress on that. Thanks.
Tu veux dire quelque chose?
Non, non, moi c'est bon.
C'est bon. Bon, merci. Alors le dernier mot sera en français, s'il vous plaît. Je crois que cette session était tout à fait intéressante et nous a montré la voie dans laquelle nous allons pouvoir progresser avec ce LDC5 Monitor, qui est de faire le lien entre les indicateurs internationaux dont nous disposons et puis leur leur réalité sur le terrain en liaison avec les institutions qui seront les partenaires de ce LDC5 Monitor. Donc nous n'avons pas encore bien identifié les partenaires, on les a vus déjà, ceux qui sont autour de la table, mais nous devons progresser très vite sur le choix des partenaires, autant que sur le choix des indicateurs, parce que les deux sont liés. Et je crois que j'ajouterai 2 remarques sur cette démarche pour l'orienter, comme on l'a dit. Nous n'allons pas refaire tout ce qui est fait dans les institutions internationales. Nous allons profiter de cet avantage comparatif que nous donne cette association de grandes institutions internationales comme UNU-WIDER et OCDE, de think tanks du Nord et de think tanks ou d'organisations du Sud. Et c'est ça la spécificité. Et c'est cette spécificité qui nous permettra à la fois d'affiner des indicateurs au niveau national et subnational, et aussi d'avoir une nouvelle appréciation de l'efficacité des mesures. Je reviens sur cette question parce que je l'ai posée hier, et nous devons arrêter de considérer que nous devons proposer des choses sans regarder quelle a été l'efficacité des mesures passées. Et donc ça, c'est un point important sur lequel le moniteur peut apporter des questions importantes. Ça a été tout l'effort justement de la FERDI d'essayer de mesurer l'efficacité. Et puis, bien sûr, nous allons, avec nos partenaires, réfléchir sur les probabilités, les meilleures chances de graduation. Mais la graduation, c'est pour, dans les 5 années qui viennent, c'est pour un petit nombre de PMA. Et les autres, c'est beaucoup plus important que les pays en voie de graduation. Et donc, nous devons avoir dans l'échantillon cette perspective. Merci.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. I think there's lunch served outside.
Thank you to the interpreters as well. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. And I think that there is something outside waiting. Thanks.